So being 6:46, I'm going to go ahead and open the Board of Selectmen meeting of Tuesday, April 9th, 2019. We are immediately going to go into executive session, and we will be returning to open session. And at that point, I will be reading through the agenda for tonight. So is there a motion?
I move that the board enter into executive session pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20A, Paragraph 2, to discuss negotiation strategy with respect to non-union personnel. Brian Soros, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the town's negotiating position, and that afterwards the board will return to open session.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Carrie's wearing a T-shirt.
Kiss your eye.
Read.
You can see me? I didn't think you could see me.
Yeah.
Reed, aye.
Brown eye.
Oscar Little Eye.
Lewis, aye.
It's a little colder here. We will catch back up with you, Carrie, in a bit.
Okay.
Good evening, and welcome to the Carlisle Board of Selectmen meeting for Tuesday, April 9th, 2019. We have just come back from executive session, which started at 6:45. I'll report on in a second, but that's why we're running a few minutes late. So I will read through today's agenda. At 7 o'clock, we will have community input. At 7:05, there will be a presentation on the fiscal year 18 audit report by the audit committee. At 7:45, we're going to be hearing about a proposed Eagle Scout project, Malcolm Meadows cleanup. At 8 o'clock, we'll get an update on the Complete Streets project implementation and the charge. 8:20, status on the master plan from the Master Plan Steering Committee. At 8:45, we will review the proposed town meeting warrant articles regarding the Community Preservation Committee recommendations. At 9 o'clock, we will review the FY 20 FinCom budget recommendations and talk to them. At 9:15, we will be signing the annual town meeting election warrants and taking a position on some of the warrant articles, not all of them. At 9:45, we will have the town administrator's report. At 9:55, liaison reports, 10:05 minutes, and 10:15 adjournment. As always, I may take some of these things out of order. Oftentimes, the later ones are we use to fill in if we're ahead of schedule, which doesn't happen often. So with that,
Comment there.
with that, I first just want to quickly report on the executive session. The executive session was to discuss the contract negotiations for the fire chief. And I just want to report that we did sign the contract. We are in agreement with Brian on all the terms of the contract. And that contract has now been signed by both parties. So we're very, very happy to move forward and very, very happy that Brian has agreed to join us as our new fire chief and our first ever full-time fire chief for the town of Carlisle. Pass those back down. So with that said, let's move on to community input. Is anybody here for community input? Yes. Tim, would you mind just giving her a microphone up there?
Yeah. Come this over here, Jeannie.
That's pretty good when they know my name, so. My name is Jeannie Janetsko, and I'm at 898 Maple Street in Carlisle. I just had a short introduction. I've been doing a lot of research on understory and Lyme disease and all kinds of things associated with living in the country. And there's a fascinating work being done by many scientists right now, very current, and it's evolving as an alternate culprit to understory degradation, particularly because most of the work that was presented to us here in Carlisle was in Pennsylvania forests. And the title is Earthworms Are Invading Our Forests. I did not know that earthworms are not native to New England. They were all killed off during the glacial period. And what we've had is a time period where there were no earthworms below halfway down Pennsylvania. And in the last 100 years or so, with trade coming in, there's been European and now Asian earthworms, and they turned out to be very, very aggressive. And in fact, the nightcrawler that you're familiar with is a European one. This is by Dr. Peter Groffman, a microbial ecologist at the Carey Institute of Ecosystem Studies. People tend to think of earthworms as benign or even beneficial creatures. Gardeners love them, but earthworms are not native to the northeastern United States. In regions of North America once covered by glaciers, earthworms are recent imports from Europe or Asia. They likely arrived as stowaways in ship ballasts or in plants that settlers wanted to establish. Conventional wisdom is that earthworms improve soil by aerating it, so their establishment might seem like a non-issue, but the forest soils are already well aerated. Quote, "Within about 3 to 5 years, the forest floor just disappears," unquote. According to Peter Groffman, they destroy the rich layer of organic matter that sustains forests, plants, and animals. And then towards the end of the next paragraph, they have a negative effect on biodiversity, especially these spring ephemeral plants like trillium and trout lily and salamanders. So I just thought I'd input this into Carlisle as something that people might be interested in looking at in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Could you possibly send a link to that article to Tim?
Oh,
So
absolutely.
we could all,
Sure.
I like this first. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other community input? All right, seeing none, let's get on to the audit report. Come on up and we can put some chairs
I
up
was gonna say,
here.
the chairs are gone, I have
Yeah,
to stand.
have to sit on the floor.
That's how we treat our guests. They're people that do work for us.
Priscilla, why don't, and
Yeah.
why don't both of
Just
you
need
come on
to
up
slide
too?
the card off up a little bit.
There's no. And I do want to just, because your back's to everybody, just make sure you speak up so that anybody sitting behind you can hear you. Great, thank you for coming.
I'll start off. I am Matthew Hunt with Clifton Larson Allen, here to talk about the fiscal year 2018 audit. What I'll talk about is more of a financial statement summary. Then I'll turn it over to Kevin from the audit committee to go over the management letter. So with your financial statements, and I'll be making page number references as well. If anybody has any questions as I'm going along, is wondering where I'm getting my information, please let me know. But obviously, your financial statements is a pretty robust document, 60-page plus document. So my goal when I do these types of summaries is to try to give you some of the real key highlights of the financial statements. So the first piece of the financial statements on page 1 is your auditor's opinion. So that's really the most important part of the financial statements is what is our auditor's opinion on the numbers that you see in this report. And the opinion is what we refer to as an unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion that you can receive in an audit. And what that basically means is that your financial statements are free of any misstatements. And just as a frame of reference, the town has received that type of auditor opinion report for many, many years in a row. And I think that's a real testament to Priscilla and the financial team that you've been able to get that unmodified opinion for many, many years in a row. And the reason why I don't mention Bonnie is she wasn't
here.
I
got nothing.
I'll toss you some bouquets if we have an unmodified opinion next year. So getting into some of the numbers, your what we call full accrual financial statements start on page 15. The way governmental financial statements are set up is there's a set of financial statements that we call full accrual, which includes all your capital assets, all your long-term debt, all types of long-term assets and liabilities, and there's another set of financial statements that doesn't include those balances. So the highlights of this particular full accrual set of financial statements, I want to focus on net position. You'll see that your net position down at the bottom of page 15 is categorized into various categories, including net investment in capital assets, which is essentially your capital assets less any debt used to finance those assets. That's a little over $28 million. You also have various, what we call restricted net position categories, which total a little over 5 million. The piece that I always like to point out on this particular financial statement, because when people see deficits, they don't like to see deficits. And you'll see an unrestricted deficit there at $15.9 million. Just as a frame of reference, these unrestricted deficits in this particular full accrual set of financial statements, this has really just become commonplace for all Massachusetts municipalities as a result of the pension liabilities and the OPEB liabilities that have come onto the financial statements over the past couple of years. So again, nothing to be overly alarmed about. It's certainly something to be concerned about from a long-term financial planning perspective. I know the town has put a lot of planning and consideration into those types of liabilities, but at this point, you really do see these types of deficits very commonly in Massachusetts.
So is this
Looks
all?
like OPEB is about 2/3 of that liability, isn't it?
Yeah, your OPEB balance does make up, is close to $13 million, so yes, that is certainly a big portion of it, and your pension liability as well is $9.4 million. So that's a big part of it as well. And those are really the two key factors that cause that deficit. So that's the highlight of the full accrual financial statements. Jumping a little bit ahead into the set of financial statements that what we call our fund financial statements start on page 17. And what I'd like to focus on there is your general fund, particularly your general fund balance. What you'll see is that your general fund balance at the end of the year was $6.3 million, which overall was a $700,000 increase over the previous year. Again, similar to net position, there's various categories within fund balance. What I'd like to focus on is what we call your unassigned fund balance. That's basically the portion of your fund balance that is not restricted in any capacity. That's about $3.9 million, a slight increase from the previous year, about a $5,000 increase. As a frame of reference, that $3.9 million does include a little over $1 million of your stabilization fund. One of the things, and sort of backtracking a little bit on page 9, there's a table within your MD&A section of the financial statements that was brought on a couple of years ago. It gives a good trend analysis of that unassigned general fund balance and how that compares to your revenues. So you'll see at the bottom there's a ratio, and that's what that ratio is unassigned fund balance compared to your revenues. We feel like that gives a really good reflection as to basically your reserves within the general fund and how healthy they are, and also a trend as to how they're going up or down over the past several years. So you'll see that ratio is 12.3% for fiscal year 2018, which is a very healthy ratio. We always like to when people ask us, well, where do you like to be? We like to say, you want to be at least at 5% with that ratio. So the fact that the town's at 12.3%, certainly a healthy percentage. One thing you'll notice is that it has declined over the past several years. And again, that's something that we're seeing very commonly in Massachusetts municipalities as well. Again, with those, the increased pension costs and OPEB costs, et cetera, we are seeing those ratios go down over the years. But again, 12.3% is a very good percentage. Going back to your balance sheet, on page 17, you'll see that there's other columns within there other than just your general fund. Those are what we call your other major funds. So just some real quick highlights. The CPA fund has an overall fund balance at the end of the year of $1.3 million. You'll see this year there's a new major fund for the communications project, which just got underway in fiscal year 2018. The reason why that's now showing up separately on your financial statements is due to the short-term note that the town had to issue to finance that particular project. And again, you'll see some deficit fund balance there, but again, that is more based on the fact that right now that project is being funded by a short-term note. Once that project is funded by long-term debt proceeds, that deficit will go away. Page 18 is your other major fund related to the fire truck. That was around last year as well, but again, the only reason why this shows up as a major fund is due to the short-term note that financed the purchase of the fire truck. And again, the deficit fund balance is due to the fact that it's financed by a short-term note. So those are really the highlights of the main part of the financial statements that I wanted to point out. Now I'd like to sort of jump ahead to your footnotes, which is a lot of good information in the footnotes as well. And so just some real key highlights on your footnotes. Page 42 starts off discussing the town's long-term debt and outstanding debt. You'll see that outstanding long-term debt in total for the town at the end of the year was about $12.5 million. The town did not issue any new long-term debt and retired $1 million of long-term debt in fiscal year 2018. And just as a frame of reference, another ratio that we like to point out is how much of your debt service is part of your overall expenditures. You know, you don't want that ratio to be too high because that's a fixed cost, but you also don't want it to be too low because it could be a reflection that you're not meeting your capital needs. Just as a frame of reference, the town's debt service expenses are about 4.5% of your overall expenses, which I also believe to be a healthy ratio. Moving forward on footnotes, other footnotes I want to point out is the OPEB footnote. And one thing to point out this year is that there was an implementation of a new Gatsby standard. You may recall we've been putting that in our management letters the past couple of years to make you aware of these new standards that were coming out. So everybody likes to talk about Gatsby standards. It's a lot of fun, but so I don't want to bore you too much with it. But basically, it was Gatsby 75 that was implemented this year, and really from a layman's perspective, in trying to sort of understand, well, how did it make this liability different? What's the difference between the previous standards? In the past, the previous standards were such that you would have an actuarial valuation of your OPEB liabilities, and what the actuary would calculate is it would basically come up with a number that says if you wanted to fund this liability over a 30-year period, you would have to put in X number of dollars into a separate fund in order to be able to fund it over a 30-year period. That number that they would come up with would then be compared to what you actually paid on a pay-as-you-go basis for your retiree health insurance costs, and the difference between the two would increase your liability. Kind of a funky way to do it, and so Gatsby, I think, woke up and realized, well, wait a second, why don't we just have an actuarial calculate the 30-year liability and just put that number right on the financial statements? So that's really what Gatsby 75 is. I think it's a much smarter way to calculate the liability, so that's really the change this year. And what that did, and we knew it was going to be the case with all municipalities with that change, is that the liability was going to increase from what was being reported before. So that OPEB liability for the town went up from $7.8 million to $12.9 million, a $5 million increase, which again was not a surprise given the change in the standards. One thing I want to point out, and Kevin might get into this with the manager letter, it is discussed in the manager letter as an informative comment. The town has made some movement towards setting aside money for OPEB. But when it comes to Gatsby and the Gatsby Standards, what Gatsby Standards say is that in order for any set aside of OPEB assets to actually be counted towards that liability, they have to be in what's called an irrevocable trust. So the town, at least as of June 30, 18, had yet to have that money be set aside in what we call an irrevocable trust. So if anybody was sort of wondering, hey, we have these set aside assets, how come that didn't help, reduce the liability? Once that trust becomes irrevocable, that's when you'll start to see those assets really impact that liability, because not only do you get the assets counted against the liability, you also get to increase the discount rate from which the liability is calculated. So when the discount rate increases, the liability decreases. So that's something I wanted to point out. And so really for us, that's what we feel from an audit perspective is really the key highlights of the financial statements. I could turn it over to Kevin to talk about the manager letter, but if anybody has any questions now about the financial statements, I'd be happy to take them.
It's not actually about the financial statements, but it's more about the OPEB. So we have a $12.9 million liability, but there really isn't any circumstance where we, as a town, would suddenly have to come up with $12.9 million to pay that, right? Because that's something that we owe over a period of time, right? So, it's lots of times you look at this and be worried and say, well, that liability may all of a sudden be called in. That can't happen in this case, right? This is just a benefit that, retired employees have that we need to pay to them over time.
Correct. It's an accrued liability. So really the only obligation that you have is to pay those retiree benefits as they become due. And so
Right.
this liability has nothing to do with, well, we're $12 million behind on paying our retirees health insurance. Yeah, it isn't anything that's coming due. It's a full accrual, long-term prospective liability.
So as a town, the most important thing is that we make sure that we always have enough money to be able to pay on an ongoing basis, all of those things with some buffer just in case, right?
Correct, right, and that's part of your annual appropriation process, is to estimate what that number's gonna be on an annual basis, and the town always funds that, and there's never been any issues there.
So, along with that, there's typically the management letter, which would come with some recommendations in it. So I'll talk about OPEB first, since we're already on that subject. So back in, I think it was 2015, the town started setting aside funds, and we've gradually been increasing those on an annual basis, so, which is why we're just over $1 million in there now. So as Matt pointed out, with the, I think it was last year, the town took the vote to go ahead and authorize the setting up of an irrevocable trust. However, we haven't executed on that yet based on advice from some of the other communities around. So that's one thing for consideration. Now, if we go ahead and consider, is the timing right to go ahead and take that funding that we've set aside for OPEB and to do that? Because to Matt's point, in addition to offsetting the liability, it would also give us a increased discount rate in the assumption of the calculation. So that there could be some benefits there. It's at least worth considering. So that's one of the points. Another point is, this year, this was a tough year for the finance department and accounting department, just in terms of all the activity they had going on. So they had to put in some, invest a lot of personal time and go through some heroic efforts to go ahead and get the financials closed out. As you can see, it was successful by the fact that we're sitting here with this audited, financial statements. But a couple of things that attributed to that, one was the software upgrade. So we went through a successful software upgrade, but that takes, a lot of time and effort, as anyone knows who's gone through that. And we also had personnel transition. So I think those two things combined, along with just the normal workload, made it a challenging year. So one of the recommendations that we wanted to look at too is knowing that the software upgrades will only continue as that becomes a more critical part of how we manage the town. We need to come up with plans for that so we can plan for those in the future. And also we're looking at some things like maybe some recommendations around cross-training and just transition, types of things as we anticipate personnel transitions coming forward. So we wanted to make sure that we put some thought into that. From an IT perspective, there's just some operational kinds of recommendations that are being considered in terms of taking a look at the processes, policies, assessments, analysis that we could do on a regular basis, just to, continue to improve our operational command in the IT environment. So that's an area where we were looking at potentially. And then finally, the financial policies and procedures, making a concerted effort to get some of that documented. And that would also help with the challenges around the transition activities and upgrade activities. The more that we can have those policies and procedures documented, the more we could more easily bring in resources to help and continue to, keep folks educated on that. So those are all in draft form right now, but those are the things that we've been looking at in terms of the management letter. I think I hit them all.
I have a quick question about the software upgrade. So this is Munis, right? When we went from Munis on-prem to Munis, the cloud version, is it our own environment there, or are we just along for the ride when they're doing the upgrades and we don't need to do?
Right now, they're doing the upgrades for us. We've scheduled them weekly, so anybody finds something that needs to be upgraded, they upgrade it quickly, and we get the use of that. It's the next step in the upgrade, which is maybe 2 years down the road to Munis 2018, right, Bonnie?
Right.
That's a big step forward.
Okay, so all the minor releases and everything are
They're going to be
there,
doing,
but
yeah.
if there's a major release that requires something, that we're gonna have to do something.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they're more ready to help us now because of what we just went through. It was bumpy.
So I have a question about the irrevocable trust. You said there was some input from, other towns about some drawbacks in doing this?
No.
What sort of drawbacks?
Yeah, maybe, do you want to?
Yeah, I could speak to that.
Okay.
And Priscilla, you can jump in as well, because you're the one who actually relayed this to me. The town's investment advisor related to OPEB has been recommending to municipalities that hold funds with them to consider the idea of holding back on doing an irrevocable trust until the Massachusetts Department of Revenue issues formal guidance on how to go about setting up an irrevocable trust. Just to give you a frame of reference, the legislation on this has changed over the years. The municipal acts from a couple of years ago sort of changed the way, but usually the Department of Revenue, when you have that kind of legislative change, will come up with an informational guideline release in which they sort of lay out, here's the parameters if you want to set up an irrevocable trust or whatever the legislation might be. They have yet to do that. So I think Bartholomew is recommending, might be better to wait until DOR gives that formal guidance, that you go about establishing that trust based on DOR's guidance. Just as frame of reference, there are municipalities who have set up irrevocable trusts in lieu of that DOR guidance. It is something that is possible to be done. It's not that Massachusetts is saying you can't do it. It's just, I think that that's just Bartholomew's recommendation for the town.
I'm wondering if there would be any wisdom in doing hybrid, like not putting everything from the OPEB into one single irrevocable trust, but holding some of the funds back so that you kind of get the best of both worlds. You get your discount points and whatever other benefits you would possibly, I don't know, just putting that out there.
So what exactly do you get if you put it in an irrevocable trust? I know you said the discount rate goes up and the liability goes down, but what exactly does that translate to savings or whatnot for the town?
I can give a sort of a frame of reference. The actuarial evaluation that was initially issued by the actuary actually was giving credit for an OPEB trust. I think there was some confusion as to whether or not it was irrevocable or not. My recollection is that the liability was actually reflected at about $7.5 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. Right now, it's like 12.9. So if you at June 30, 2018 had an irrevocable trust, and I think the discount rate would have been 6.5%, whereas now it's around 3.5%, so it's a pretty big spike. It's a $5 million, change in your liability. It makes a real big difference.
Yeah.
And like Kevin said, every year we're putting more into it.
Right.
So you put $350 into it,
The way
$4
it
and a
is
quarter
now,
into it, it's
if we
gonna
really-
add.
As I understand it, the way we have it now, though, is if we had some other emergency and we really needed those funds, we could use it for something else. As soon as you put
That's
it in
right.
an irrevocable trust, that's
can't-
it. It's OPEB and nothing else. That's why I'm thinking, maybe some hybrid type of thing where we would guarantee the OPEB,
Mhm.
those, a certain percentage of the OPEB funds, but maybe guarantee that we have stabilization somewhere else too.
Could you point out for me in here, what is our annual spend on the retirement?
Unfortunately, on the financial statements, if you were to look at page 19, you see employee benefits. That includes, though, your health insurance for your active employees as well. There's no specific.
Very inflated then.
Right, there's no specific line item, but let me just jump, but previously, the footnote would have that number, and actually, there is a footnote table on page 45 that you can jump to. And if you look at that table sort of in the middle of the page, you'll see benefits payments of $243,610. That is your retirees' health insurance.
Okay, so we're paying about $250,000 to retirees, yet we're required to put $13 million aside in order to cover that debt?
Remember, that's accrued over the.
Yeah, it's a projected over a 30-year
I
horizon.
understand.
Yeah.
But there's not gonna be a time where we have to pay all 30 years at once, right?
Correct.
So if you were to completely fund this $13 million fund, why would you ever want to put it in an irreversible trust? Because you're never going to be able to spend the money, ever, right? It's going to be,
Yeah.
it would seem like, having a fund that you could easily pay that and make sure that you can always easily pay that, maybe just from the interest or whatever,
Yeah.
would make sense. But having a 13 million, I realize nobody at the other side of this table here thinks this is, yes, we should be doing it, but it just seems odd that we have a $13 million liability for something that's not, is costing us $250,000 a year, and there's no circumstance where all of a sudden we have to pay $13 million. I
Right.
understand it's,
That's right.
in the future, that's how much we're gonna be paying out.
Right, we're committed to that in the future, but you're right, it's a much smaller on an annual basis, which is why I think Bartholomew has made that recommendation in the past.
And so, how far have towns gotten towards paying, towards these funds?
There's some that are fully funded, they're,
Leominster.
yeah, one of-
Leominster.
Wellesley is fully funded.
So they've so let's just say they're us. They've gone ahead and put $13 million aside.
Yep. And and at some point, the only thing I know we've talked about in the past is could potentially have an impact on ratings when we go to borrow money, but to date, I don't think we've been negatively impacted, but
Aren't they gonna
that's,
have a problem where they have this fund that has so much money and is just accumulating so much money,
Well,
and there's not gonna be anything they can do with it?
One benefit is that they're actually able to pay these annual costs out of that fund instead of
Right.
Yeah, but
appropriating.
you don't need $13 million to get
sure.
$250,000 of interest, right?
Sure,
Yeah.
I do think the bond rating piece is something to consider. Again, I don't think at this point in time, the bond rating agencies are really dinging, municipalities if they don't have these set-aside funds, but as time goes on, and certain municipalities start doing it more frequently, and comparatively speaking, other communities aren't doing it, it could potentially be an impact.
Mhm.
There was a time when we couldn't do OPEB, and there was a year where like 6 extra teachers decided to retire, or we tried to actually buy them, encourage them to retire, so suddenly we would have a really big spike in our benefits
Mhm.
thing that we couldn't protect ourselves from. So it is nice to have some sort of a fund to protect yourself from that, but I'm sort of agreeing with you. We don't need, I don't think we
I
need
mean,
to
if you-
save the entire thing all up front.
If you had a
It's-
fund that, you were pretty certain on a terrible year, you were still gonna have maybe twice as much as what it was gonna cost in case you had those spikes, it seems like that would be a totally reasonable thing to do.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, before it was a
But $13
totally
million
unfunded
is-
liability, and we weren't even allowed to save for it. But now it's like we're forced to save more than we need for it. Like they kind of went the other way.
Could you just explain a little bit more for me on page 9? I think I spent a lot of the time that you were describing it, just trying to find where we were. The percentage that has been going down and is now 12.3, what does that represent, and should we be worried?
It represents your unassigned fund balance per your balance sheet, okay? So basically, the portion of your general fund balance that is not constrained in any fashion, it
Uh-huh.
takes that and compares it to your revenues. It's sort of just a frame of reference to say if for some reason you had a big decline in your revenues, what are your reserves to be able to absorb that kind of decline? That's why we compare it to revenues. In terms of being concerned, the reason why I wouldn't be concerned is because that 12.3% is a very healthy ratio.
Yeah.
As compared to other municipalities. And again, the decline in the ratio, that's something that we're seeing as a trend also in municipalities, is because each year what we're finding is more and more free cash is needed to help fund the budget, et cetera. The more and more free cash that you use to fund the budget, the more that number is going to decline. Of course, you're a little bit constrained with your revenues. Property taxes can only go up a certain percentage each year, but you've got expenses that are going up much larger than that 2.5%. So that's really why you tend to see that trend.
Yeah,
over the last few
it
years.
worries me, just because it may be a big number, but it's gone down 3% in 5 years. And it seems to me that means we're
I think,
spending cash rather than increasing taxes for the decisions that we're
I
making.
think some of that was by design, though.
Yeah, it was
And-
by design.
Oh, was it?
Because we were building a school, and we built it up so we could use some free cash, right, Kevin?
Yep.
from-
So we were trying to use that to kind of soften the curve of the increase on taxes as a result of the schools. So we had intentionally built it up, and now we're we had been applying some of that.
And so do we have a goal of what we want that percentage to be, that, we built it up from like our optimal, or do we,
Yeah, I don't think we have a documented,
We don't have, I think
Goal.
the 10 to 12 is what we shoot for.
uh-huh,
And that's one of the things we wanted to address in creating those policies.
right, okay.
but yeah, I think we had always talked about in the 10 to 12
10 to
kind of
12,
neighborhood to be
yep.
healthy.
So we expect a couple more years of it coming down because of the school?
Yeah, I
Till the end of the year and the numbers shake out, it's hard to say where we'll be next year.
Okay. Great. Anybody else have any questions?
I have a question regarding financial literacy. We have no way of giving our citizens a report card about how much it costs to run any part of our government, because the benefits are all lumped into one bucket and not associated with any one department. And so it's very difficult for people to get a real sense of what it costs to run our public services, to run our schools, that's fully encumbered with benefits. Do you have any guidance about financial literacy kind of issues, that maybe what other towns are doing to help their citizens better understand how their money's being spent?
I wouldn't necessarily be able to speak to the financial literacy objectives of other municipalities, but I would point out, from a financial statement perspective, again, it's not broken down by department, but if you look at page 16 of the financial statements, this financial statement, again, it's your full accrual financial statement. Those benefit costs are broken down functionally. So again, you don't have departmental detail, but what we have to do with these financial statements is, you'll see there is no line item called employee benefits. There is no line item called pension benefits. We take those expenses and allocate them functionally. So just for frame of reference, again, I can't necessarily speak to financial literacy objectives of other municipalities and ways to do that. I think that's something for the town to consider in terms of information that's available on the website, et cetera. But this does at least give you a functional breakdown of your expenses, and the benefit costs are allocated functionally.
Okay. So if we look at this 25 million, or let's say we look at this 3.7 million for public safety, that includes everything? That includes all the benefits and everything?
Exactly. Yep, and also,
That's
this.
fully loaded.
Yep. In this financial statement too, I mean, again, it's full accrual, which isn't really necessarily how you budget and how your operations work, but it does show you in that last column, this net expense revenue column, it does show you direct expenses of a particular function, including benefit costs, revenues that apply to a specific function, and what the net expense revenue is. Now, of course, obviously, if you look further on that table, you see your real estate revenue is $26.9 million. That doesn't get applied to any specific function, but you do also in this financial statement get to see, what do some of these functions, what do some of these departments, what do they generate specifically for revenue specific to their particular function. So that's another value add of this particular financial statement.
So, and then just, I'm sorry to drag this on, but, so if I look at education, that's 4.1 million, those are grants, that's money we get from the state and the federal government for education. Therefore, is chapter 90 money not counted in here? Because I don't see the 90,000 or whatever it was that we
Public
got.
Works.
Public
For
Works.
For
capital
public
grants.
works is,
96,000.
I think
oh, I'm sorry, I was looking at public safety, I'm sorry.
Public Works,
Yeah.
95,941.
Got it, I saw the word public and stopped there.
It's okay. But I'm just wondering why, because, and then the net expenses are what's actually been spent? I mean, why do we have these, why is the last column in paren?
It's because, again, if you look at your $26.9 million of real estate revenues, all this front part of the table is showing is revenues that are directly associated with a particular function show up in this front part of the table. Because most of your activities are funded by real estate taxes, and that comes below the table, that's why you.
That's why that's those are all negative, okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct.
Okay. It's not that we're spending more than we.
No. It's again, it's just functionally showing expenses and direct revenues of those functions.
Okay.
And you got a lot of general
Got it.
revenues below.
Got it, okay. All right.
Makes sense.
Glad I asked. I'm gonna take this home and
Okay. Any other questions? Great, well, thank you very much, and thank you all so much for all your hard work on this and throughout the year to make it such a great audit. Right, thank you. I know it was a hard year.
It was.
But it's over.
Thank you.
We're on to this one.
April.
It's over, and now it's time to start the next one, right? That's-
Relax for 2 months.
Okay. So it's 7:45. We have Eagle Scout project for Malcolm Meadows. Why don't we go ahead and move his seat back over here?
Yeah, we've taken all your chairs again.
I'm fine standing.
Great.
Okay, well then could we give him a microphone?
It's good for dramatic effect.
Yeah.
See right behind this podium. Get your microphone.
And if you could just start with your name and your address, and then jump right into it.
Okay. I am Robert Nickel. I live on 119 Stern Street. And I'm doing an Eagle project where we are cleaning up this trash pile in Malcolm Meadows. And I was wondering if you would sign this letter to the employees of the Carlisle transfer station to allow us to go and dump, go and take as many truckfuls of trash to the station as we need on those Saturdays.
Okay. Do you know where the trash came from? Do you know what the?
We think it's this. So there's someone named Malcolm who owned the Meadows before, and he dumped all of his trash there before donating it to the town.
Okay. So it's his own private landfill
Yep.
type of thing. And how far are you going to have to haul it down the road? How far away from the road is it?
Not very far.
Uh-huh.
Like 40 feet, maybe less.
Okay.
Oh, so that's when you first walk in, it's kind of off to the left?
Yeah.
Is it that area? Okay. Oh,
Well, I learned something.
wonder if you'll find anything interesting.
I've been allowed one visit a day to the dump. I think there are times where I've done more than one.
Yeah, I mean, technically, you're really not supposed to, but nobody monitors it, you know?
Small car.
Yeah.
So we'll stay focused on his project and not dump trips.
Well,
Um,
it's part of the.
Well,
So
that's kind of what this is about.
what do you mean by cleaning up the rock walls?
So there's some rock walls, and we noticed some trash in them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not moving the rocks around, just
Yeah.
taking the garbage out from amongst the rocks.
Yep.
Yeah, and then this is all, excuse me, town land, right? None of it's trustees of the reservation, right? You're staying on the town side, not the TTO side, okay.
It's 300 square feet.
Yeah, there's a good amount of stuff in there, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Conscom was supportive. Right, is that area wet?
No,
You're just gonna take the stuff off the surface? You're not gonna?
maybe
let
like a
Tech
little
dig
bit
down and,
down.
you gotta be careful the deeper you dig.
Mm.
It's like town politics, the deeper you dig, right?
How many people do you think you will have helping you?
Around 10.
And you're the project manager.
You gotta be affirmative with this. Yes, I'm the project manager, I will drive people to do the work, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I've been pelting with questions. Anybody else have any questions? Carrie?
Council at your church, where's it acted, has approved this project. They're just asking for permission to bring the stuff to our transfer station, right?
Yeah.
That's the only question that we have to
Right.
say yea or nay to, I believe.
There's a letter at the end.
Yep. Yeah, so I mean, ultimately, what do we just, I mean, not that anybody's probably gonna stop you anyway, right? But, just want a letter?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
a special permit, right? 'Cause
He's
when we
not a
took it-
commercial hauler, so.
Right, yeah.
We do have a letter here.
Oh, so that's the,
That's the letter.
it is in the back, okay.
You can sign.
We need a motion?
I think this is great. I
Yeah.
certainly
It's a
support
nice
it.
letter.
Absolutely.
definitely.
Sure, go
Yep.
ahead and make a motion.
I would move that we approve signing the letter which authorizes the Boy Scouts and to
Well, that's the official one.
dump, take the trash from Malcolm Meadows fee-free.
A second?
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Reed, aye?
Oskalilowai?
Lewis, aye.
Brown eye.
Just wanna go
Great,
line.
thank you very much.
Thank you, so, yeah.
Good luck.
I got yours.
It's a great project, thank you for
Yeah.
taking that on.
Hopefully it won't snow anymore on your project.
I see, Carrie's,
Just pointed out to me, so I take the vote to
Just
accept
sign
the financial statements for
Ah.
the fiscal
Carrie's
year.
with your initials.
That was a normal step in the process.
That way
Okay.
it's-
Neglected to do that.
We will do that right after this. Thank you. Okay, so is there a motion to accept the audit report for
Oh.
fiscal year ended June 30th, 2018?
So moved?
Second?
Okay, any further discussion? Is that okay? Okay? Carrie?
Singer, aye.
Reed, aye?
Brown eye?
Oskalilowai?
Lewis, aye.
Unanimous. Thank you very much for keeping us on it. Okay, so let's jump down into town administrator's report.
Okay. In your packet, you'll see a request from the police department to use Center Park for a departmental event on, I think it's April 27th, from 11 to 3 p.m.
I assume the police detail will not be necessary.
It was
I
funny.
think we have to have one.
Yeah. Okay, is there?
I
any-
move, oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, anybody have any comments and suggestions or questions?
Are they inviting the Board of Selectmen to this?
I haven't made the motion yet, Carrie, so hang in there for a second. I move to approve the police department's request to use Center Park for an event on Saturday, April 27th, from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Second?
Okay, any further
Yeah,
discussion?
let me second it.
Okay,
Singer, aye.
Reed, aye?
Brown eye?
Oskalilowai?
Lewis, aye.
Okay.
All right, the second item is, again, the amended charge, the facilities committee. I did attach an amended charge. I spoke with Kate earlier today, and apparently 2 members of the facilities committee are not asking to be reappointed, so there'll be some membership changes. So I think there's a request to kind of take this under advisement and maybe make some further changes to the committee. Is that correct?
Well,
or-
the major problem is that originally, when the committee was constituted, there was specifically a member from the school committee.
Mm-hmm.
Then somehow that got removed from the charge for whatever reason, but it doesn't seem to be in there at the top anymore.
It's just 5 members
It's
appointed by
just
the Board
5
of
members.
Selectmen.
And one of the members that is leaving is the school committee member, so I guess one of the things the committee was gonna talk about was, you know, how important is it to have somebody from school committee and, you know, et cetera. And do we care?
Yeah, I'll have to pull that up and see if I can remember why.
Maybe because the membership for long-term caps is so specific, maybe it was thought to
Yeah.
make it a little broader on facilities.
But,
I propose that we
Speculate.
go ahead and
Just-
we make, you know, we move on modifying it as is now, just because that way we can get those two people on.
that's
Yeah.
fine, it's just, yes, I agree. I'm just kind of giving you a heads up that this was a question that came up in the committee, that's all.
Yeah.
Not for tonight to be discussed.
Yeah. I'll have to look back through the different versions of this to see if I can see
What the,
red line, why it was taken out, and I'll try to do
History
that
was.
this week.
Okay.
but if we want to put the two non-voting members on,
Yeah. Is there a motion to
the two
adopt
facilities.
the Carlisle Municipal Facilities Charter as presented tonight with revisions for April 6th? Oop, that says 2018, so that must have been last year. There isn't a revision date on it.
That's,
As presented.
So move.
Second, okay.
That works, why don't we do it that way?
Further discussion?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Brown eye?
Oskalilowite?
Louis, I.
Okay.
All right, so we have two requests from the Conservation Commission that Alex Para be appointed to the Cranberry Bog Working Group.
We did that
Fill the
last week.
vacancy left by the resignation of Stephen Smith, and that Dan Wells be made a full member of the Cranberry Bog Working Group. He's currently an associate member.
Okay. I thought we actually moved that last week.
No, we just appointed Alex to the Conscom.
Right,
yeah,
right.
Oh, so is the cranberry, sorry, I missed the
This is
cranberry
the
bog.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
So.
nice, we haven't had a quorum, so we haven't had to meet.
I move that we appoint Conservation Commission member Alex Para to the Cranberry Bog Working Group, and that Dan Wells be appointed a member of, also be appointed to be a member, full-time member of the Cranberry Bog Working Group.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Louis, I.
Kissinger, yeah.
Messing us up.
Reed, aye.
Brown eye?
Oskalilowite.
All right.
Sylvia will be happy.
All right, and then that's the package letter from the Garden Club requesting use of the town common for their country garden tour, rather, on June 7th and 8th. And it's an annual request that the board approves.
Is there a motion to approve the garden club's use of the town common for their country garden tour on June 7th and 8th of 2019?
I so move.
From 10 to 4 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Brown eye?
Oskalilowite.
Louis, I.
There was an amendment to that of 10 to 4 before it
10
was.
to 4.
All right, also attached here, you'll find the current draft of the proposed policy regarding personnel change requests. It's been put forward to the Personnel Board for their review and input. And if you have comments on this, please send them to me. We'd like to get this on an agenda in the near future.
Yeah, so the one that you saw in the packet should have incorporated our comments from the other night. And so, you know, we're not going to discuss it tonight because I think it's important that we get the Personnel Board feedback first. But if you do have any comments, please just send them on to Tim so we can get those incorporated. And then we'll get feedback from the Personnel Board and we'll get it on an agenda at some point soon after the Personnel Board has had a chance to review it.
I just have one thing, though, that I was thinking about that we hadn't talked about before on this, and that is if we establish a policy to review to do a review of personnel every 5 years, that I would like to have a statement at the beginning saying that, you know, because we would have that policy, changes in the interim will be very difficult to do.
Yeah,
Or
I
that
think-
sort of, you
Yeah, I
know,
think
or-
before we put something like that in policy, though, I think we need to know how much did that thing cost us?
Yeah, okay,
Right,
well, but
yeah.
it's something I would like to,
Yeah.
let me ask us then to please fold that into the conversation when we do this, the rest of this policy, because I think it's kind of goes hand in
Yeah,
hand.
yeah.
And is April 3rd the most current draft?
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
From the last meeting.
'Cause I did it when, Saturday?
Yeah, you sent it a little while ago.
Saturday or Friday, right?
Meeting was the second, right? Isn't that the second? So,
Yeah, so it was sometime after that.
yeah, days later.
Unlike me to have done it just the next
Yeah,
day.
that's
That doesn't seem right, but.
Well, then again, if it was a Saturday, you probably weren't doing anything, so.
Okay. Goodness gracious.
You
All
can
right.
chuckle a little bit.
Item 6 in my report, we have a proclamation from the board to Douglas A.G. Stevenson Jr. in recognition of his achievement as an Eagle Scout. You'll recall that Douglas's Eagle Project was creating storage space in the Highland Building for the COA and others. I think we've got a proposed proclamation in the packet. The board, Jen has the original. The board would,
I would move that the board issue the proclamation in recognition of Douglas Stevenson Jr.'s attainment of Eagle Scout rank.
Second,
All those in favor?
Kissinger, aye.
read I.
Brown eye.
Oscar Lilloye?
Lewis, aye.
Great job, Douglas.
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you very
We'll go
much
see it.
for the
And
help over
yes.
at Highland, too.
all right, next item, item 7. He's only been fire chief for an hour or so, but he's already got a request for the board.
All right.
Chief Sorrows, as an outgrowth of the meeting we had with him last week, discussed the need, the desire rather, for a backup ambulance. You know, we're getting a new ambulance. In fact, it's arrived today. But there was some conversation of, you know, the many opportunities that it makes sense to have a backup ambulance when the frontline ambulance is out of service or, you know, maybe in service in a nearby community. So there's an opportunity to actually retain the ambulance that we were going to trade in, and maybe,
Yeah, I can.
Nathan, you can
add a little bit
explain
more.
that.
So I think it's my fault. So, you know, during the course of our discussion, you know, we had talked about the fact that we were getting this new ambulance, and I remembered, you know, as we were getting, seeing the quotes for the ambulance, what we were getting, you know, as a trade-in value for the ambulance was incredibly low. And, you know, far and away, our largest number of calls are medical calls, and yet we have lots of fire trucks, which I think is important, but we have one ambulance. And so I just casually asked Brian, why did we not keep the old one? Wouldn't it make sense for us to keep the old one? And he was very enthusiastic. Yes, we should. So he has gone out and, you know, so by law, it has to be garaged. If it's not garaged and then you put it back in service, it has to be re-inspected. It has been inspected, and so it's good for, I think it doesn't have to be re-inspected again. I think he said for 2 or 3 more years, 2 years?
Yeah.
2 or 3 more years. We would get 5,000 trade-in for it, was it?
Yeah.
We'll get a $5,000 trade-in for this ambulance, which is fully outfitted, of which we would have to pay to take the radios out of. And it's a fully functional ambulance that we know, right? We've had it, and we know what's good about it, we know what's bad about it, we know it has everything in it that we need. they can make room in the fire station right now for it so that it can be stored. And they can figure out how to pay that $5,000 without having to ask us for more money.
Oh,
And so, you know, I was very enthusiastic, yes, you know, because, you know, right now, you know, you have to keep your fingers crossed that there's only one medical call at a time. And we can't go on, oh my goodness.
Mutual aid.
Mutual aid.
Mutual aid, yeah.
We can't do mutual aid for the ambulance because we can't be without an ambulance in the town, so we're not even helping out our neighbors when it comes to that. So I would propose, you know, I've been very enthusiastically endorsing this with Brian. I would propose that we give him the green light to go ahead and keep the truck. Now, I did say, don't come back to us next year and say, we need a new ambulance, because we have this old ambulance, right? You know, that's not the point. The point isn't that we're gonna have two brand-new $350,000 ambulances, but why get $5,000 for an ambulance that you could really still use?
Yeah, and it was like $1,000 to take the radio out.
Right, and $1,000 to take the radio out.
I can take it out for free.
But not legal.
okay.
so-
Yeah,
I
that,
guess it's too late to cancel a new one, huh?
Tim, your summary there was misleading, because it looked like we were going out to buy a used one, so this is a much
Well, it is.
better
it is a
report.
used
I'm
one.
much, and I'm
Yeah.
also on board
used
with
by
that.
us.
I wasn't really happy about going out and buying a used ambulance.
So where it started, you know,
Yeah.
where it started was we thought, you know, we weren't exactly sure what the phase was, and I think there's still lots of things that Brian needs to iron out in all this. But you know, initially it seemed like what we may have to do is go back to the company we traded in for and buy it back from them, and it might cost us more.
I
But-
see.
But even with that, depending upon what it was, it's worth it because we know this ambulance, right? It's already says Carlisle on it. It already has all the
Yeah,
gear in
it's
it that we need. It has the radios that, you know, that we need. There's just something to be said about something that we know it.
And probably marginal re-equipping costs on an ongoing basis.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maintenance, but I think for the value that we get for having that second ambulance,
Yeah.
I think it's worth it,
Yeah.
given it's our largest number of calls.
If it's raining, we can use that instead of the nice new one.
Yeah, exactly.
Good point,
Yeah,
good
yeah, we
point.
don't have to
Done.
drive it we don't have to drive the four-wheel drive one in the snow.
Yeah, not gonna get it dirty. Yeah.
All right, do you need any authorizations for that? I mean,
I
since
don't
he can
think so.
do
I
it in
think-
his
No,
own
it's in his
budget.
budget.
Gonna give him a green light and he'll
Yeah.
come back with
Okay.
Yeah,
a proposal.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Amen.
All right. And then you see the upcoming schedule, the Finance Committee's budget hearings on the 22nd. We meet again on the 23rd, and town meeting is on the 29th. Monday, the 29th.
Should we post a meeting before town meeting, just pro forma?
We
Yeah, we usually
normally
do.
do,
Yeah.
whether we, need to or not, right?
Yeah, we usually do.
6:30. What would that be?
Yeah.
6:30 on the 29th?
Yep.
Okay, we'll do that. That's my report.
All right, thank you. So let's move on to, now we're 10 minutes late. Complete streets.
So I'll put that updated chart. So don't I still have to put that updated?
No, I want to sit on that side.
Boy, he's,
It's a thing, I always have to walk on a certain side. So we wouldn't have a very long report for complete streets, actually, so this worked out okay. Basic update is that the Complete Streets Committee met and they're reviewing the design estimates, and they're actually working with the three engineering firms that provided us estimates for the design work in the town center to refine the estimates and kind of even them out between the three so we can compare them. We talked about timeline. Gary Davis and Chief Fisher have some specific ideas about how they want to approach the work, being it's in the center of town. So ideally, it would be done when school's not in session for the summer. So depending on where things line up with the preliminary engineering work, they feel they'll be able to coordinate
what they need to do. So,
No, it's really good so far. It's not, I mean,
Better say that.
Yeah, no. It's moving, it's
Yeah.
off the ground.
Yeah.
The biggest question was, could we push for this summer or next? It looks like Tim was able to confirm that we can
Well-
still use the funds next summer.
so well, we're talking about the timeline, and
Yep.
one of the concerns was, the process for engineering, permitting, and everything being in place in time, and then coordinating with the contractors to do the work. So we do have flexibility to work in this, in the following spring as well. So we have flexibility, which is really good, because we'll be able to approach this with, we won't be rushing, in other words.
Right, and I think that one of the critical things to this is gonna be making sure that we're getting public input in, because we're talking about
Yeah, that's exactly why we didn't
changing
want
the
to.
center of town there. and
We didn't wanna
making
rush,
sure that
yeah.
we're-
Yeah, we don't want to rush the design. We want to do it right. We want to get preliminary designs we can present to the town, then circle back afterwards, with them and refine those designs with the
Yeah.
public and the engineers.
So our timeline has a couple, points of public information sessions, through the design process.
It is worth mentioning, because I don't think you brought it up yet, about the first project we can go ahead with almost immediately.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that. Yeah.
Okay.
So there was consensus in looking at the three projects. Project 1 is the crosswalk safety. It's primarily focused on implementing crosswalk safety at Banta Davis and 142 Bedford Road. Those two crosswalks. It's not in the center. It's kind of in the outside of the town center, and it, a lot of the preliminary work was done already when Stamsky McNary did the engineering, the
Traffic safety study.
Yeah, the safety work. So we're going to work, the group decided that we would continue to work with them. It was the most economical, and they gave us a price of $4,000 to stake 8 signs. And then they would do the engineering inspection of the signs and provide the as-built afterwards. And so actually the engineering inspection can be reimbursed by the grant too. So,
Sometimes, I'm not exactly sure of the scope of what stake, I'm not sure what that means.
Well, they can do
oh,
the site,
they're
the sighting.
installing the signage at the
Yeah.
crosswalk safety, so that has to be staked out.
So what we've found is that with the traffic safety study, they basically already have done construction design.
Yeah.
Right, so we're way ahead of where we thought we were on that first project, which means that once town meeting passes, if the
The supplemental
the
funds are
supplemental funds
approved.
pass to pay for the signs,
We don't have to wait, and which is good, because then we can start, get the crosswalk safety stuff taken care of, it's this spring right
Right.
now, which is when we wanted to do that ideally anyway.
So I guess when we met last time, one of the questions I was asking was, why don't we do the big project first and then figure out what we need to do? And I think the response was, well, we have to do it all at once because that's how we save money.
right?
So that's what
doing it.
That's-
came out of this
yep.
discussion, and we realized Project 1, which is the smaller one, and it's not in the town center. So the Project 2 and 4 are the rotary redesign and the sidewalk from East Street to Ferns. That's all in the center. These two are outside of it. They're much smaller. They're the ones that,
But I think to directly address what you said, you're right.
We're not talking raised sidewalk here. as
No.
part of-
No,
We're
not
just talking
here.
about putting the signs
Put the
at
signage,
the other
yep.
crosswalks.
Yeah, it's a safety enhancements to the crosswalks outside of town center.
Yeah, these are the signs that say, hey, there's a crosswalk coming.
yeah, yeah.
and-
And then, hey, there's someone in the crosswalk,
Right,
you better
exactly.
stop.
Yeah, so it's that additional
And then the
signage,
Jersey
right?
barrier that pops up.
Right, yeah.
But it doesn't,
Oh,
this one's not impacting any of the pavement or anything, it's just the
Minimal.
size of the road, it's
There's
just
no
putting the signs up and the signage.
right.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I mean, there are landing pads on this, so it will affect it won't affect the pavement of the
Okay.
road, but there's gonna be landing pads, I believe, on either side of the crosswalks
Yeah,
that
which
are
is
gonna be
great.
put in.
Especially Banta.
Yep.
Jeez.
Right.
Right.
So, that's the plan for that. What else do we want to talk about? Anything? There was the committee composition. I think, Tim was pretty good.
We mentioned the extension. The grant runs through June 2020, but you can request an extension 60 days before that.
Okay.
If you're underway and you can't finish it by the end of June, they'll give you,
Did they give you any idea about how long that extension could be? Is it
I think it's through the end of the year.
through the end of the year? Okay.
3
The
days.
key is that we were, 3 days. I mean, that was really helpful when the committee met and we were looking at the project timeline overall from all the pre-construction activity. You know, and also Gary and John felt like that would be really great. So that was good news.
Yeah, for the town rotary, they think it's essential to do it July and August when the traffic is minimal. And I think, going to what you said, it would be a rush if we tried to fit a design in and start construction this July and August. So knowing that we have a little bit of flexibility there to possibly push it till next summer. And as long as we get underway before the grant expires, then we should be able to do that.
Yep.
Because the goal would be to have it done by the end of summer anyway.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, yeah,
Mhm.
before school.
Okay.
Anything else?
I think that was.
Yeah, so,
Complete.
Formation?
Well, you also want to talk about a more formal implementation committee for the project, I think.
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
We're kind of a loose working group.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's probably going to be all the same faces, but
Yeah.
I think the board ought to have a formal committee for the purposes of the
Yeah,
project.
so do I, and the reason I think I brought this up to Tim is just making sure that because there's this grant of a lot of money, making sure that we have a formal committee that's been appointed
Yep.
by the
That
Board of
makes sense, yep.
Selectmen, so
Mhm.
that we just don't get ourselves into trouble, having this kind of informal thing that's going on.
Yeah. No, so I'll tell you what's represented on the committee now. All of TSAC is on the committee, the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee, which is the Chief of Police, Chief of Fire, DPW Superintendent, Tim, and a Pathways representative, which is Deb Belanger. I think that makes sense to have that represented. A planning board member, and so Pete is on that committee now, and because there's potential for more projects, and we're definitely looking at what we'll be able to apply in the future. Probably somebody from the master plan steering committee might make sense to have on there as well. Right, and then
And
to
Jan
the
is-
extent.
Jan has been sitting
Jan
in
has been, Jan
on it.
Corneal
Yep.
has been. And then to the extent that projects that are taking place in the historic district, we would want to have somebody from the historical commission on there.
That would probably
There
make
is
your
now.
life a lot
There is now.
easier.
They've been
Kathy
attending,
and
yeah.
Annette have been, attending the meetings, so.
We're good.
um,
Who in that? Who was the other one?
Kathy
Oh,
Keller?
Kathy, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, they're both
Um,
excellent, yeah.
So, I think, and then having a Pathways Committee representative, which is covered by, TSAC has a representative on there as well. So, and Board of Selectmen.
I was gonna say, I'm gonna do this one. Yeah, I mean, I'd
But I
love
don't
to
know
be.
that-
on it.
So are you on it?
Excellent.
Or do you?
Yeah.
Oh, and I don't, in
As
that
long
case,
as
I
we
don't
don't
need
meet
to
at
be
1
on it. No, I'm
o'clock on
serious.
Fridays.
Wait, I missed what you said.
Yeah.
Something just happened. What happened?
We
I'll be
gained-
the BOS.
gained a new member.
You're stuck with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, can we just try to not meet at like 1 o'clock on Fridays? I mean, you always send those TSAC ones out, I'm like, that just doesn't work. So, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be 7:30 on a Tuesday night, but.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in accounting for the town employees that are on
Right,
it,
no, that's the thing, I
you know.
know that there are
Yeah.
other, yeah,
Yep.
or maybe
Yeah, that's the
early in
thing.
the
It's
morning.
mostly town employees on the
Right.
committee, so
Yeah.
if you want to tell Gary to come in at 8 o'clock on a Friday, go for it. And-
Gary's probably here at 5 o'clock on a Friday. Yeah.
So were you thinking
I'm
of?
talking
Oh, I meant in
other-
the evening. You
Oh,
meant in the
okay.
morning.
Yeah.
As far as the committee composition, is that what you were thinking of, pretty much, or?
Pretty much, yeah,
Yeah.
just formalizing the structure.
So I guess what I would ask is, if you're gonna be the person on it.
Yeah, I was supposed
I
to
think,
draft something, I think. Yeah.
I think that Tim has something, if you could just
Well, you sent me
formalize
2
it,
things.
work with them,
Yeah.
and let's get a formal charter
Yeah.
Yeah.
that we can have so that we can appoint people
Yeah.
and have it be formal.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Oh,
You
you know
can't
what?
go anywhere.
I can't go anywhere,
So you know what?
no.
Actually, I know that you're on your schedule tonight is to talk about the warrant articles and take positions. Would you be willing to talk about the Complete Streets one now and
No, we
take a
have to
position
take it-
now?
no, we
You have to take it in the order? Okay,
Okay.
all right.
Okay.
You want this chair?
I don't know, Jan, we'll take it. I'll surrender it to Jan.
Yeah, there's still an hour before.
Pull up another one there. I mean, we could do it.
They've got your slides, but do you want to project them or not?
If you have them in your package, some of you. It doesn't matter if the folks in the audience.
Actually, would it take a long time to set it up? That way he can,
Not at all.
that way he can put it,
Yeah.
if somebody's watching,
Folks, and
you'll be able to put it on, yeah, so we'll go ahead and do that, and
Master plan.
so we need to swing around.
Yeah, is it green? It's green, so that means it's on.
so don't turn it off. Jesus, it'll take 10 minutes to warm the bulb up again.
Got a really big back, this chair.
Yeah, nice new chairs. They don't sink.
I'm just gonna have it go directly.
These
on
not,
my-
not yet.
Not
You know,
yet.
yeah.
The planned obsolescence.
If you wouldn't mind.
You can do that.
Can you see? Oh, yeah, it's over there. So, start, or,
Well, we gotta project first. I think you have the other screen. You're gonna be in split screen mode.
how do I change it to desktop 1?
Easiest way is go to mirroring. So come up to, where's your menu? There you go. Because then you see what they see. Where's displays? There we go. Okay, show mirroring. Should be up there, the mirroring options. Arrangement and mirror displays. There we go. Now you see what they see. So you can just project it or go to the full screen mode and
That's okay, Jan. I have a copy of it tattooed on my right arm.
Yeah, you've heard this all before a few dozen times. Well, it's slightly different, slightly more emphatic. As you know, we've been working towards getting funding for the master plan consultant at town meeting. And so I'm just going to give a kind of reassurance of the background, the reasoning behind the fee, and why it's so important that we're doing this. And you've heard a lot of this before, but I'd just like to reiterate that the master plan is the one place where everyone comes together to talk about everyone's issues and interests and needs and topics. And it's an organized and formalized process where we go through everything in a rigorous way to make sure that the balancing act and the understanding of the trade-offs between various priorities and needs of different constituencies in town are kind of met. Many of you may have seen the presentation that John Ballantyne did as an information session about a month ago, where he laid out the financial, demographic, and school enrollment trends that are occurring. There was a really great article in the Mosquito about it. And it basically just highlights the fact that we have to do something different because we're not on a sustainable pathway. The second part of this is really important, is for town government and for all the various committees and volunteer groups and elected officials to have a common language around what the roadmap forward is, that in a laid out way that we can understand what our targets are, what our annual priorities are, and know how we're going to get there, what it means to get there in terms of the quantification of
the metrics. So for example, if we have a certain kind of idea about priority projects and how many housing units we're going to try to create, or I'm just making stuff up right now, what we want to be doing in town center, how we measure the success in meeting those needs. That's sort of part of this process. And then finally, the whole idea of it being an integrated effort and looking at everything together. It's the whole beauty of the process. The process itself is 12 months long, starting in September 2019, wrapping up in September 2020. That's at least what's in the RFP and what we're hoping the consultant will come back and tell us. They may suggest we do it in a shorter period of time or a longer period of time. It has 3 phases: a data gathering and analysis phase where we collect all the information, meet with all the different constituents, pull together all the information we have and kind of sort it and analyze it. And the second phase then is a sort of a brainstorming, looking at best practices from other places. If there are new ideas that we haven't explored, sort of getting some insights from other towns that have been struggling with similar issues, who might have come up with innovative ways of addressing their financial or implementation challenges. And then finally, an implementation strategy where we lay out the conceptual cost estimates, the roles and responsibilities of who's responsible for championing a particular initiative, what are the potential funding sources, how do we get it done, basically, and kind of lay it out piece by piece. What changes to the zoning need to be made. So just a guidebook of a to-do list for us. And then finally, it's a very inclusive process with a lot of public meetings and meetings with boards and focus group meetings. The cost itself, you've all heard this a million times, but $160,000 is the total budget. That includes $135,000 for the consultant fees, their labor and expenses. And then the planning board suggested or asked us to include a $25,000 amount for ancillary costs to the town. And those include things like GIS mapping, community meetings, printing materials. We did a lot of research and a lot of homework to come up to the $135,000. And I think you've seen the package before in terms of our research of other towns. Basically, we're, the ballpark that we're in is we're looking at between 143 and 277K for the master plan process, including the consultant fees as well as town staff, of which and experts that are employed by the town, of which we don't really have. So that's Concord, Harvard, Bedford, and Boxborough are in that range. Oh, and here I have, I did this a week ago, so it's hard to keep up. So basically, Concord, their overall fee was $277K. The testimonials we've heard from their planning director, Marcia Rasmussen, they're using, all the boards and committees are identifying and using this plan as their kind of guiding. It's a kind of a collective energy now around getting things done because everyone's on the same page. In Bedford, the plan is doing that as well as sort of guiding ongoing initiatives around housing and how to sort of look at how they're sort of reconstituting their strategy around housing, as well as it's being the basis of various zoning amendments. And theirs was a 235. A lot of staff time in Bedford, but still a significant chunk of change. In Boxborough, again, all the boards and committees are held accountable, and every year they look at what they've managed to achieve. And it's become, in all of these cases, Harvard. The master plans becomes the sort of go-to book for how to get everybody kind of working as a collective towards a common set of goals. So we end up with a strategic roadmap that prioritizes projects and town priorities and what the needs of the town are. We end up with and we're already seeing this, a lot of people coming out to participate. People I don't think have participated in, don't usually participate in things, are coming out to voice their opinion and participate. And we expect that to only increase. Identification of the 5-year priority projects, as I mentioned, with budgets and implementation steps. An updated and fully functional and fully well-organized GIS system that we can then maintain instead of having to always worry about trying to rebuild or create. And then we have the basis for comprehensive policy and zoning. And we also will have the sort of conceptual basis for moving into the open space and rec planning and the housing production plans, which are all, the rec, obviously they're already underway or they're getting ready to go with the open space plan, but those things will be coordinated and support each other's efforts. So some people have asked why we need to hire a professional and why we can't just do this with volunteer hours. When we first started the conversation, one of the big reasons we had that discussion, I remember in the first couple of meetings we had with the planning board, and the planning board was asking us to solve the problem of everyone in town being a subjective voice. So bringing someone in from outside to negotiate and mitigate contentious issues is something that was seen, and I think it's true to have someone leading the conversations who's not in the midst of it. It's a very labor-intensive process that has to happen in a sort of formal and kind of defined timeline, and you can't slip because people get frustrated. You have to get it done within a certain period of time before people get burned out. And there's just no way that volunteers can devote that amount of time in that amount of intensity. We've spent 2 years on this already, and we're guesstimating we've used about 1,500 hours amongst all of us. So that just it just seems like it's important. And then not to mention that we need professionals who have expertise in various fields. Planning is a sort of mushy field. It includes a lot of things. And different planning firms have different expertise in them. And if you don't have it within your firm and you see it in the RFP, you team up with a sub-consultant who will supplement that need. So we just don't have that level of expertise across the town. We have some of it, but not all of it. And also, planning experts work all over the place and talk to a lot of different people and see interesting things that we might not know about. So they'll bring a lot of new perspective to the town challenge. So that's why we need a master plan. And that's why we'd like you all to support the $160,000 warrant funding for a master plan consultant.
So when you say consultant, are you talking about, you're not talking about an individual, you're talking about a firm?
Mm-hmm.
It'll be a firm, and they'll likely have sub firms with them.
Yeah, we estimate like there is going to be a team of like 4 to 6 people, that we'd be looking at. Yep.
I've always thought up till now we were talking about an individual.
No, I think the town has tried that before with a single kind of freelance.
Makes sense.
We're looking for RFPs to be answered by a consulting firm. Your chair disappeared.
I'll get it.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Anybody have any questions?
Sorry, I saw a lot of nods off. I'm tired too.
I don't think I nodded off.
You don't remember it anyway.
Anybody have any questions?
My imagination.
I just had one thing, in which is, I think earlier today or yesterday, must have been yesterday, because I was here in the morning. I don't remember when it was, recently. Tim mentioned that there was the RFP was being drafted for this.
Yes. Yep.
Would it be possible for us to see a copy of that?
Tim has it, right?
I haven't.
Okay.
Okay, because I'd like to be able to, I mean, because I think that would inform me anyway so much for exactly what we're getting for the $160. So I'd like to see that before I took a position on it anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree.
You guys think you're going to take a position on this tonight?
I don't think so. I'd like to read the RFP first.
Okay.
Any other?
I could walk, so we walk through, so the RFP draft was approved by the Master Plan Steering Committee on the 28th of March. Last night, we were in front of the planning board and walked through it and got their comments, which were relatively minor. And so our goal is to incorporate their comments by the end of the week. And we were going to share it with you guys then. I mean, obviously, you already have, or Tim already has it, but we can share an updated version of it.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great.
So, but I would like to kind of differentiate between the RFP and what we're asking for in town meeting. I mean, I think the RFP will be a document that we can revise from now through. It doesn't have to be done by town meeting. Let's put it that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, but I think it just informs, at least it would inform me better, a little bit better as to, like, you know, what are we getting for that $160,000? You know, I think this is really good as to why we need the master planning process. I'm fully supportive of the master planning process, and you know, I'm supportive of this. But before, you know, I like making informed decisions. So if I'm going in front of town meeting and I'm saying yes, you know, I support this, I'd like to just have as much of the detail as I can.
Yep. I agree.
Okay. What questions do you guys have? Because what I want to make sure is that we eliminate any confusion, any concerns or anything like that, you know, as we get closer and closer to town meeting. So if there's something up here that we haven't addressed, I want to make sure that we know about it and we can work with you guys to figure out what it is. And
Yeah, I mean, I can't, you know.
Well, I mean, I think some concept of what the deliverables will be for our 160,000.
Yep. Yeah, and that is in the RFP. That is laid out very clearly about what we expect from it. It's an action-oriented plan. It's not just a wish list. You know, I think we actually use that exact term in there. It's something that's going to identify the town's needs and their wants. You know, if we want a community center, it might not be a need yet, but it might become a need in the future, and it might be want. But on top of that, we also have to. We're going to be very pushy with a consulting firm that this has to be coupled with funding sources and revenue streams. You know, we may have to develop new revenue channels and things like that to pay for these things if we want them. And it has to be a realistic, action-oriented plan that can get us from where we are now to where we want to be in 10 years, where we want to be in 20 years.
Yeah, because I think, you know, that would be, you know, I didn't think we were going to, that this is what we would get. But what I would worry about is that what we would have is a plan that said, well, we should do this, and we should do this, and this is the timeline, and because it's in the plan, well, that's what we should be doing, and, well, where's the money? And, you know, I mean, so, you know, so that's, you know, one of the things that, you know, you kind of always worry about in these things. And I know the group of people that are involved in this, I don't think that's where we're going.
Right.
But you know, those are the types of things that you worry about, you know, kind of like these things
yeah.
just, boom,
Yeah,
all of a
we
sudden
spend
out
all
there, and
this money
everybody's
and-
pointing to it, and you're like,
Right.
yeah, but we don't have $40 million.
Yeah,
you know.
I think context is going to be a good word, a big word for us when we're talking to the consultants. Everything we do, we need to be able to do in the context of our town and our resources, right? And so proposing that we, you know, build, you know, a 50,000 square foot community center, you know what I mean, or something like that, probably doesn't fit our context. Maybe a smaller one, maybe a senior center, things like that. And then how are we paying for it? Private funding, public funding, revenue sources. We want to investigate all that, you know, as part of this plan.
Right.
So it's identify the goals, identify the needs, and then identify how we can do it, you know, for real.
Yeah.
So just to be, the RFP, what I outlined is it just goes into more detail. There aren't other things that we haven't talked about that are in here.
It does talk about deliverables, but they're things like a master plan report. It doesn't define the chapters of the report, or, it doesn't define the specific, the end results of the different topics that are in the report. It outlines a process. The process explains various things like, in the master plan, in the second phase, in the third phase, that we want both a master plan vision and framework, a kind of long-term frame, and a 5-year priorities and action plan, and it describes the kinds of things we want to be looking at in that. There will, there's more, it's more kind of, it's in a concise narrative, there's more detail. What'll happen, though, once the consultants get this, is they're going to put their own words into it and give us more to work with. And then when we negotiate the contract with them, there'll be even more clarity around what the products are. But I would be very hesitant to define what the specific deliverables are in an RFP beyond a kind of a, we want to have a report. I don't know, is it going to be 100 pages or 50? I have no idea. And these are the things we care about, and these are the steps we want to go through in the process. But I just want to make sure, because this is one of the things that came up last night. Someone was asking to put the 81D requirements in the final deliverables. And it says in here that that's part of the process, and that has to be incorporated.
I totally get that this is an RFP, it's not a statement of work, it's not part of the contract.
Yeah,
But
I just want to have it, make it.
The RFP, the very beginning
Don't
steps.
get over, don't anticipate something much more information than we've already shared with you.
The things we did just discuss is in kind of the prologue, you know what I mean, in the beginning, about our way of thinking and what we want to get out of it. It's
Yeah.
not saying we want the specific deliverable, but it is saying we want an actionable list, you know what I mean, that's in the context of our town. So those things we just discussed are in there, but like Jan said, it's not defining, this is exactly how the report looks. And the other thing that we do, we summarize every issue in here, and we do that on purpose. We stay away from single issues because we don't want to assume. That's been a big thing from the beginning of this process, is our committee's stayed away from assuming what's going to be important to the town and what's not going to be important to the town. We want to let the process flush that out. So that's kind of the RFP. I think it's very thorough from what we need to be at this phase, but it doesn't define every little piecemeal detail of what we're going to get out of this as a work product.
That would be the next phase.
Yeah, that would be the next phase.
Yeah.
Yep.
I guess one of the other things is I'm assuming this will go out to bid. I mean, if we
Yep.
get the money, they'll be out there. And how you will decide the characteristics of the firm wins the bid. I mean, there's a fixed amount of money, so that's not going to be an issue.
Right.
The issue will be who has the expertise and sensibility, what this town is like, who can successfully fulfill this contract.
Yeah, and that's all outlined, there are evaluation criteria, and
Scoring system.
the whole, a detailed list of all the deadlines and dates, what we're anticipating, what the requirements are for the submittal. I mean, it's all in here. I think it's the best written RFP I've ever seen.
Town council did review it as well, and thought it looked very good.
Great. Well, it seems like you have a draft of the RFP.
Yes, I
You're
do.
going to have another round.
Yep.
And,
Yeah.
But if we could share the draft now, because what we don't want to have a cycle past this cycle of reviews. Do you know what I mean? So next planning board meeting, we hope by then that I have all the feedback gathered from the planning board. We can bring it up in the public meeting, finalize it there, come to you guys tomorrow night, and we hope to have all your feedback before then on the RFP. So I think you guys can distribute it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, to them.
Yeah, and if anybody has any comments,
Yep.
just send them directly to Tim.
To Tim. Yep.
Okay, good.
All right.
I'd like to reinforce what Jan said, though, about the responses to the RFP. These firms, let's say there are 6 firms that respond, will each have done this multiple times. They know about the state's requirements. They've got deliverables that they've used multiple times. They'll be presenting examples of what they've done for other towns as their credentials. So I think the question for us is, do we want to be involved in that process of hearing from these consultants as selectmen? To what extent do we want to hear what they have to say and interact with them? Because we're going to be sending them back after the initial interviews to finalize, their pricing and their proposals. And then when they come back with those updated responses, then we'll decide which one we want to work with.
Yeah, we'll be setting up a selection committee that'll, be broad-based enough that there, maybe some selectmen on that, but they won't be making a presentation to the full board of selectmen. We'll have, planning board members, other members of the steering committee and.
Yep. FinCom, we're thinking planning board,
Yeah.
board of selectmen,
So we'll put a board
representation,
together
yep.
To review.
Yeah,
the
that makes
responses
sense. Yep.
And interview the finalists.
Yep.
Make a recommendation.
And when do we need to have, well, we don't need to have it yet.
Oh, well, yes, right, when do we need to have it is hopefully right after town meeting is the hope, so.
May 6th is
Mhm. Right.
All right, so maybe, if there's gonna be this, maybe on our next meeting, we should pick who might be on that.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah.
Not overall, but from the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yep.
Well, and again, from a process standpoint, what involvement do you want to have? Do you want to see copies of the proposals? Not necessarily being part of the interview process or the selection process, but,
I mean, we've done a lot,
extent.
Carrie, I've been on a few of these in town, and I think normally the finalists, or the one or two finalists may be presented outside that selection committee, right?
Right.
But I don't, we normally don't,
Gonna have 5 firms in.
right, yep,
Yeah. We bring a recommendation back to the board.
right, yep.
My question is, are the selectmen comfortable with that?
I think that we'll have 1 or 2 selectmen on this
Mhm.
committee, and we'll have to be, I would think anyway, we just have to be comfortable with those people representing the Board of Selectmen.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, do you agree with that, Carrie?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. All right, great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are you doing this one?
I am.
You gonna move over there?
No, I am not.
Okay, so we're moving on to our 8:45, which is the town meeting warrant article for the Community Preservation Committee.
Yeah, so, I think this is like my 47th year as chair of CPC. I did give it up for you. So anyway, we have 4 projects this year that we're gonna recommend.
We're looking in the.
Oh, so it's
motion.
Article 22? Yeah, of what came out. So motion 1 is always the budget. There was like an 11.5% match this year, so not great, but still. Any money is better than no money. So we always appropriate at least 10% of the 3 buckets. So 54.5 is what those are. We actually are gonna appropriate more to the administrative expenses this year, and I'll explain that in a minute. And then the 361.5, that's the balancing number. So that, technically, that goes into the reserve account, and then that's the money that next fiscal year turns into undesignated. Those funds can be used, but typically, we're very stingy with those, just so we don't spend it all in one year. So there are 4 projects this year. I think we only had 4 applications. No, we had 5.
I'm sorry, what's the amount that we have in each of the buckets right now?
Oh boy, I don't think I brought that. Off the top of my head, there's like 200,000 in historic. There isn't much in open space because we spent that with the Woodward property. So maybe there's 50,000 in there. There's like 4 and change in housing.
For what? And
like 400 and some odd thousand.
Not 4,000.
No, 400 and some
Okay.
odd thousand,
Right.
and it might be closer to 5 in
Okay.
housing, and then around 1 million, 1.2 in
Undesignated?
undesignated.
Okay.
Yeah, or actually, it might be around 800,000. Yeah, it's around 800,000, 8 to 9, I think, in undesignated, because we used the funds. Yeah, we would have had 1.2, but we used the reserve fund last year to pay for the Woodward, the purchase of the open space. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, the land.
And that's before the 361 or after the 361 is put in there?
So the
These
360.
balances that you're giving us, is that before you
So
allocated these funds or
yeah, so that's before,
before? So.
right? So another
Okay.
54 will go in, 54,
Yeah, got
54,
it.
correct?
So if we had
Right.
1.2 million, we now have 1.5 million.
Exactly,
Okay, got
exactly.
it.
Yep.
Just-
Yeah, but I honestly think that's 8 and change. I think it'll bring it up to 1.2 with the
Okay.
361, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, because we try to keep it around that, and then it always bumps up to the 1.2-ish, but because we did spend it on the Woodward purchase, that changes that number. So 4 projects that we're gonna bring to town meeting this year. One, excuse me, so motion 2. It's a continuation of the project that Charlene started for the preservation of the town records. Mary has continued to do this. She actually brought some of the materials that have been preserved. It's really amazing to look back in some of these books and see, the handwriting. It's phenomenal. So there's still a huge number of materials from 1754 to 1935. So this is the 16,571 is going to do a few of those. She has a more itemized list of what some of these things cost, because it did all go out to bid, and then there's one preservationist, is that how you say it? That he did the previous ones, and he gave estimates on all of these. So, HISCOM, so one of the things with historical funds and historical preservation is that HISCOM actually has to approve it as either being historically significant to Carlisle, or it's got to be listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Obviously, records can't be, but HISCOM has approved all of these documents as being historic to the town, so it's allowable out of the historic.
Are they the sponsor
fund.
of the application?
No, so it's actually the town clerk.
It's the town clerk, okay.
Yep. The second one is $15,000 for the Trails Committee to come out of the Open Space Reserve Fund. They, so they asked for money, I think it was 7 years ago. And it was $15,000. And what they do is they use this money to pay to either create new boardwalks, so on some new conservation land, if new land is acquired, or if some of them have fallen into such disrepair that they need to be replaced. That's what they use these funds for. And it's strictly materials. The Trails Committee, they do an amazing job with, keeping these trails functional. So this really ends up being that, and it's, just to emphasize, so CPA funds cannot be used for maintenance. So they don't use this to replace a couple of boards on a boardwalk here or there. This is if it's become completely unusable, or they need a new one. So it's allowable. Motion 4 is $9,000 for the open space and recreation plan. So is it 5 years? I think, yeah, the town needs to do an OS&R plan. This is actually, so the 9,000 is going to be pulled out of the CPA administrative funds. Ultimately, it's all the same money anyway, but we conferred with council on this, and we were originally going to take it out of the open space fund, but there's this whole non-supplant clause, right, which basically is if town funds could be used to pay for something like this, or town funds should be used to pay for something like this, you're not supposed to use CPA funds. They don't want you supplementing the town budget with CPA funds, which, a lot of towns have done in the past. We've been pretty good at making sure we don't. They went back and forth with people at DOR, or DCR, Department of Conservation Record, DCR, to see exactly how this should be paid for. And ultimately, because we put together a community preservation plan. I think our last one was 2016, so we need to update that. But we put together a community preservation plan, and one of the things is we ask committees and different groups to, especially historic, conscom, and housing, to give us a plan so we can do long-term projections. This was part of, or I guess council felt that this, and DCR, felt that, this was an appropriate way to do it, because we will use this plan, because there's rankings of properties in that plan, in terms of value to the town and value in terms of open space preservation, that sort of thing. So we are going to use administrative funds for that, if the town votes to move it forward. Oh, okay. You had a quizzical look on your face, Wayne. Trying to mix things up for you, the town meeting. And then the last one is, I know Sylvia and Angie have come to the board in the past. This is actually for the restoration of Greeno Dam. So Greeno Dam is an absolute mess, and the spillways are washing out, and it's becoming a liability. So they have requested state funds. So there is a grant program for dams. The Office of Dam Safety has this program, and it turns into this long-term, you might know better. It's
The state funding?
Yeah.
It's in the environmental bond bill from last year.
Yep.
It was $200,000 toward the restoration of Greeno Dam. So
Yeah.
that's an earmark in a bond bill, so
Okay.
it's real money if you can break it loose from the state's coffers. That's kind of the trick, but
Right.
it's an existing appropriation.
Right. So, we're optimistic that those funds are going to be released at some point soon. But ultimately, they being Conscom, has gotten to the point where we can't necessarily rely on that. So the goal with this one is we'll appropriate $300,000, with the hope that over the next year, we can push and nudge and pry that money from the state. So this project won't have to start right away. Ultimately, though, it probably needs to get rolling before next town meeting, because there's permitting and all of that stuff that's been done. And they have talked with the Army Corps of Engineers, so permits can always be extended. But, if it becomes clear at some point within the next year that we are not going to get those state funds, we really have to do something. So that's why it's the $300,000. Ultimately, if we do get the state funds, prior to the work being completed, or prior to the work starting, then the whole $300,000 wouldn't be used.
Go back.
Right. At least that $200,000 would be put back. So.
And so, this is coming from historic?
So part of it, no. So part of it would be coming from historic, and potentially.
Why historic?
Potentially. So, the state has actually, there was a letter from the state that stated it was of historic significance to the state and to the town. While that doesn't really matter in terms of CPC, Sylvia is trying to get his comment. I just got a text from her earlier, because I asked her earlier today, that she's going to HISCOM tomorrow to see if they will vote to determine if the dam is of historical significance to the town. So if they do that, then the funds can be used. One of the reasons is the committee thought that we should, if we can use historic funds, we should use a portion. It'll only be 50,000 would be, that's what the committee voted. It would be 50,000 of the 300,000. Is that there's a large amount in that bucket, and ultimately, it's easier to spend undesignated than it is out of a specific bucket. So if a specific bucket can be used for a project, then, so if HISCOM came back and, they had 150,000, but they had a $200,000 project, you can always pull from undesignated, right? But if, housing comes in and, they need 500,000, right, you can't pull from historic. You know what I mean? So you try to use the buckets as much as possible, because we're forced to put that money in. But again, I mean, you don't want to stretch it. So we did go back and forth quite a bit on this, and and Kathy Keller, she's the HISCOM rep. And she said that, it's the HISCOM is generally supportive, but until they actually take that vote, we don't know. So that's why it's written in here as the appropriate bucket.
Okay.
So
this
it'll
may
be-
change.
It may change, yeah.
Right, and who owns number 4?
So-
who sponsored that? Is it Conscom or
So
is it
Conscom-
Recreation, or like, is there a team working on that one?
Yeah, so Conscom they were the applicant, but they're doing it in conjunction with CPA because technically since it's our administrative funds. But that is always a committee, a town committee is put together. David Freeman's been running that, I think, for a while. Steve Hinton is gonna do the GIS mapping, and I think Pete, he said he would help.
Well, I don't know about.
Or maybe not necessarily help, but,
The administrative part of the
yeah,
GIS.
yeah, there you go. So it's typically, there are very few outside consultants with that. Sometimes there's GIS, but since we're gonna try to bring that in-house, it should be significantly cheaper.
Okay.
So, I think last time it was done, it was in the $14,000 range. So now to try to bring more stuff in-house, it'll be, we probably won't even hit the 9. I think the original application was for 15. We got it down to 9, and I think it'll end up being cheaper than that. Because some of it too is, it's just rerunning the same maps, and we're gonna use the same artwork and that sort of thing, so.
Okay. Okay. Anybody have any questions? All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Victor. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. How are you?
All right. So you guys all done with your recommendation? You still,
We are done with our recommendation. We haven't taken position on all the financially related articles yet.
okay.
We've done some. I think most, well, I'll go through the ones that we have. Pull this up in case you want any additional numbers. That's your recommended budget. Thank you. Just make sure that number is,
It's 204 million, right? That's the,
yes.
yeah.
So just- Whenever things float around with paper and electronic copies, like, better just double check that bottom number to make sure. that-
Oh.
Oh, I was gonna say, where's, I was looking for that.
So, let me just open this up in case you want to get into any other detail that's not on there. So here you see the total budget, operating budget here is about $31 million. You can get the exact amount in the back, $30,871,000. It wasn't materially different than when we last reviewed this with you. It's kind of tweaking around the edges. Amounts to a 3.7% increase. When you don't factor into the situation where we have some debt coming off of the books, if you kind of factor that out, it's 4.23% increase over the prior year. Revenue, I could double check this with, I'm sorry?
Is this without COLA?
This is with COLA.
This is with COLA.
This includes everything.
And sorry, so it's 4.3% if we,
4.23.
4.23, right?
Yep, so we have some debt coming off.
If we don't count the debt coming off.
Yeah, which
That's
we're
really
gonna
what
add
it
more
is.
debt, as
That's-
you're gonna see from some of the warrants.
It's a 4.23% increase.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Right, okay.
Revenue,
warrants.
and I can phone a friend, because Bonnie's in the back, to make sure I got the right number off of it. It looks like just shy of 1% in terms of increase across all sources, 0.93%. So not a whole lot of increase in terms of, which is expected. That goes in the letter pretty much every year. Not much increase in revenue, and yet our budget continues to increase year over year. And that leads to, obviously, the comment that we have is that this is something that we need to continue to actively manage in terms of the increases. As you know, that the big driver around those increases is the schools, right? So I think that's a big portion of that. What we did also discuss is of free cash. We allocated $250,000 of free cash to support the long-term capital request warrant. That leaves us, and we kind of worked the numbers the other way to ensure that we have enough reserves between free cash and stabilization to maintain about 10.8% of the budget, which is roughly the same as last year. We typically want to be between about 10 and 12%, so we're kind of smack in the middle between that. So I think the other comment that I'd make here is that if all of the warrants pass, that it's a very sizable sum. So that's where there would be additional kind of concerns on that.
Any idea as to what that sizable sum would be?
Yep, I can pull that up. Warrants. Long-term cap requests, looks like in this one is 280,000. Separate articles, another 356. And then that's also already incorporating the fact that we're actually putting some things into to debt and excluded debt as well. It's already factoring that in. So things such as DPW, some of the items under DPW moved to debt.
So what's that,
At least-
what's the percentage increase if everything passes?
Percentage increase of everything, that's a good question. Let me add that all up for you here. I can add that up.
Okay.
Let's see here.
So we have not done our job this year.
What's that? Holding the budget? Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's,
You're spilling.
oops. I think that's the challenge, it's just water. That's a challenge that we've always said, you know, you have essentially contracts, you have healthcare, you have schools. I think those are all things that, you know, within the departmental budgets, we held them fairly tight.
The last year, we were like, in the end, didn't we end up like just a little over 2% in?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
So this is like 2%, this is double.
Yeah, I don't remember if that factored in debt at the end. I'll have to go back and look at those numbers.
Okay.
And I don't know if there's any debt that came off the books last year either.
Okay.
Do town clerk and conservation, do they include the increases? The
We did
salary?
not include the increases in these numbers.
Okay, so the salary
We held
increases are-
to, if you go back to September, we sat at this table and said we're holding to the end of January, that all those things need to be sifted out. So they did attend, it wasn't the last meeting, the previous meeting, and that was essentially what we said. You know, everything needs to be through Board of Selectmen and the Personnel Board by the end of January. And I think I think that also says, you know, it wasn't like previous years where people started late in the process. Both of them started early. I think that goes to say that, you know, this whole aspect of the process and getting through and making sure the agendas, you know, obviously get kicked down the lane when you can't get quorums and things like, that's a problem. And we need to address that.
Yep.
'Cause it wasn't fair to them, but at the same token, if we let it pass through, then we're not try to address the problem.
And is this, I'm looking at the second page here.
Yep.
So are we, this is saying we're gonna do an additional $50,000 towards OPEB this year?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Sorry, second page, just make sure I got the number.
Third one down.
Yep, an additional 50.
So it'd be paying 425,000 towards
Into
it.
Yep.
And that's kind of been the plan all along, right?
Yeah, we need to continue to increase it. So I think last year was 75, if I remember correctly. This year was 50.
How much do we have there now in total?
That's a good question. I have that number here in the letter.
Bonnie, about $1 million?
Yeah. Just pull up the, there's a number around what we continually hold in terms of owing, in the memo that I wrote.
Insurance and fringe is killing us.
I'm sorry?
Insurance and fringe is killing us.
Yep. That amount to- State aid debt service.
And why such a big increase in the regional school district?
Regional?
Yeah, oh, that was the OPEB that they wanted to,
Yep, I believe
That's
that was there.
300,000, 250,000?
Yeah. I don't remember the exact number, but that was one of the big numbers that we asked them to consider.
I mean.
Given the fact that I think it amounted to about a 5% increase over the prior year.
5.6.
Yep. So
But
five
the
and a.
debt service is down 40K, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but not for long if they pass their warrant articles.
Yes, and that was one of the positions we took. We do not support that warrant article. As it's written. It combines both the roadway, which has some safety items in there, with the parking lot. So because they're together, we discussed that and we do not support that.
But they're still together. They've reduced the amount to about 1.7 million, and then it's being
Yep.
voted tonight.
It is.
So the-
Yeah, I was watching on TV. I didn't know which number it was on the warrant, which article it was. But the amount that was reduced was actually not the parking lot. The amount that was
The roadway.
reduced was the roadway.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, well, they got a
the
lot of
contention
stuff
is
in
the
there.
parking lot, right? Is that really a necessary thing given everything else?
Yeah, at what, $8,000 a parking spot or something?
So fringe went up about 250,000. Education went up 686,000.
Yep.
Yep. And it's split roughly equally between the public school and Concord Carlisle Regional School District. I think it was about 300, 350 each in that increase.
Yeah, and fire's increase was the chief's salary.
Yep.
Essentially.
Chief's salary.
It's frustrating because, we're out there chasing the 5,000 and the 10,000s, and then there's these 300,000s that we have no
Yeah,
control
well,
over.
right.
We just can't catch up that way.
That's right. And some of that's not even finalized yet. Right.
Good to see street lighting though, the LEDs are
Debt
there.
service,
Even better if we took out.
Sorry, Carrie's, what was that, Carrie?
a little over 100K. How much do we have to borrow to get back, to have it cost us another 100K? What's that number look like in terms of new stuff?
I don't know if you can do that calculation in your head, Ronnie. So about 100,000 coming off of debt. How much do we need to borrow to kind of increase that back to 100,000?
Well, it depends on how you want to borrow it. I mean, it's,
Right.
if you borrow $1 million and pay it down at 10%, bands, annually, you'll eat up $100,000.
Very fast.
Quickly. So,
Mm-hmm.
Well, knowing what, the types of things that are on the long-term cap, those warrants with the police station and the parking lot, what would that look like in terms of additional debt service?
so for next year, the impact of all of the borrowing that we're looking to do, which would include the school parking lot, salt shed, all of the facility needs, some borrowing for the wood chipper, fuel tank, septic replacement, a pickup truck, and the DPW trailer. That's gonna cost about $37,000, just in interest and short-term payments for next year. The 2021 impact.
The police station, right?
No, that's not the police station. The police station's gonna cost about $130,000 next year.
Yep.
And that's just for a one-year ban, because we wanna roll that until we do the construction costs too, and issue it all together.
Yeah. Actually, this is on the last page. I didn't flip to the last page. I was just looking at the first two. Carrie.
This is just showing what it is next year.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, she has a
Oh,
footnote.
I have a-
She's a footnote for the separate articles. FY21 is 180,000. So you've already filled it back up in 2021.
Yeah, in
And
20.
more.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just you look at this and you think, oh, well, $37,000 for these things, that's not bad, but actually next year it's 180,000.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Okay. I'm gonna go home. Okay, and so the 4.23
Yep.
includes nothing on the second page, on the third page.
Correct.
All right?
Hey, you're really ready to go.
Yeah. All right, well, I think this is what we really need to be thinking about when we're going through these articles.
Yep.
And so has the FinCom taken a position on the articles?
Some of them, like I said, for the.
Care to share which ones?
Concord, Carlisle Regional School District, we did not support that. Article 9, budget transfers.
I'm sorry, 1 second, let me just,
Have that in front of you? Yeah.
yeah. So the school parking lot, so Article 26 was a no?
Is it 31, right? Or did the numbers change? Regional.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Regional one.
26 is the
It's
Carlisle
31.
one.
31. I have 31.
Yeah, 31 are CCHS.
31,
He had an idea about that. Kids mopeds and then.
there you go.
There you go.
Yep.
All right,
And helmets.
You fit more in a parking space, is that what it is?
yeah. Did you take a stance on Article 30?
30, we did not.
Okay.
30
one is-
Spalding.
Did you take a
That's the
stance on
Spalding,
the,
So I can go through the ones we did. So
Yeah.
number 9, the budget, because there wasn't many. Number 9, budget transfers. These are all support. Special appropriations, 11.
so you're supporting number 9?
Yeah, 9, 11. 14 is long-term caps. And municipal appropriation was an interesting one. So I saw that you made note that we hadn't taken a position. In my notes, I had it that we didn't take a position, but in Lynn's notes, so I have to double check with folks. So I'll
So-
circulate it. But those are we have not reviewed and approved those minutes yet.
So I'm sorry, but you said that you did approve, you
14.
did support the long-term caps request, the 279,000?
14,
That's Article 14.
Article 14.
So, yeah, so fully.
Yes.
Yes. That's long-term caps, 372, 413.
And then that was it. 15's in question.
I'm sorry. That number doesn't match what's on your third page here.
Which one?
Your third page for long-term caps says 279, 413,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and
but in here we have 372, 413.
that's because some of these got moved to debt.
That.
Okay.
And did we ever get clarity on that 80,000 for the technology replacements at the school? Because there's already money in their budget for
Right.
it. This is a supplement to that.
Yeah.
It's in there every year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do we,
I have to go back to the minutes. I seem to recall that we did, but I have to go back and check the minutes.
So,
I'm just curious, I mean,
Yeah.
because it's,
It's kind of a placeholder that carries over.
yeah,
each year, is what
exactly,
you're saying.
right. And do
Yeah.
they always need that 80, or what, what happens if we don't do it one year,
Mhm.
right? You know?
It's a fair one.
okay, so what happens to that $100,000? Where is it, where is it found in our budget? This $100,000 that's been moved to debt?
So, instead of funding it through cash,
Yep.
we're funding it in the debt service budget, so it's part of this 36,000, at
On the bottom.
Okay,
So you can see the,
yeah, I
the
see them
one-ton
there.
pickup and the wood chipper are moved down here.
Okay,
Mhm.
and so what article does that become?
That becomes part of the, operating budget. You're gonna approve it here.
Right.
So you still need to approve the full 300 and,
So it's still gonna say $372,000?
It will.
but it's gonna say we're gonna borrow for these two
Borrow,
items
right.
and appropriate for
Got
the
it.
others.
I was trying to figure out where that 100,000, I thought this
Nope.
number was gonna go down.
No, it
It's
won't.
not, okay. All right. All right, so is that all that you supported so far?
That is it.
So what I had is number 9, number 11, number 14, and number
And that's it.
31 was a no.
31 was a no.
And that's all the ones that you have.
It is. We do not plan to take positions until, like we typically do for many of them, right before the meeting.
Okay.
We have one more meeting, well, it's a budget hearing, so we'll have the budget hearing on the 22nd. We also have, planning board will be 7:30 or 8. But it's posted. I can't remember the number. Yeah.
So do you support number 10?
Number 10. Oh, yes, that was approved.
Okay.
How about 16?
16, which one was that one?
The fuel spill remediation.
Yeah.
Oh, we did not take a position on that one. I think it was getting late that night. It was already
I think
past
by law we
10:30.
have to
Yep.
do that.
Yeah.
16? I'm sorry.
Is
That's-
there
that's the
anything-
fuels-
I think
Oh,
it,
well, there's some good news on that.
yes, the number's coming down.
It's coming way down, and in fact, I talked to Tim about it today, and about how to go forward with it. They're still writing the plan, so we don't still know what the cost will be for this year.
Yeah.
But we're expecting it to be in the $10,000
Oh,
range
great.
for this year. But it might be the kind of plan where it says you have to test twice a year for the next 10 years, so it might be 10,000 a year for the next 10 years.
Okay.
So the question would be, do we ask for 20,000 for this year and next year, so that we can then have a plan for how to
Interesting.
go forward after
Yep.
that with, the water quality
Right.
subcommittee.
Yep. And
So-
I mean, there's a method behind some of the madness here in terms of, one, it was late and we had gone through only a few of these. But the other aspect is some of these types of things. If you only come in at 10,000 for the remediation, then it's about prioritization, right? The overall number. So once some of the other numbers become a little more firm, other things that we think are kind of outstanding become more firm, then I think might change some of these things. So we kind of hold on the positions on some things.
Yeah. So,
So that one's good.
okay.
At least
But then
10,
we
but-
also, the Municipal Facilities Committee then wants some guidance from somewhere about,
What to do for the next year for
What-
testing and
yes,
things like that, yes.
yeah. So that,
And I ask only because it stands out as the only one that goes down.
Mhm.
Why did communications go down?
communications.
That's a good question. Let me take a look at that.
Where's that, Alan?
It's on the first page, under protection.
Oh, it's
of-
$5,000?
Protection.
I don't know, I'll have to look that up. That catches your eye, 5,000 isn't the thing that catches my eye. The 300,000 increase is what catches my eye.
I was looking, everything went up.
It's only the 5,000 ones that we can change.
Exactly. Somehow we squeezed $5,000 out of that one.
All right, so I don't know, 4.23, my whole thought about a lot of this has just changed fundamentally. Every time I look at the number, it doesn't change.
What are your issues with 17
17.
with the police station?
Oh, with the police station.
We just didn't discuss it. It was late and we wrapped up our meeting.
So, I guess one of the things that I'm struggling a little bit is a little bit kind of some of the process, I guess. And I don't want to pick on any one committee, but it's kind of like we didn't really see a whole lot of what was going on the municipal facilities, like what those numbers were, until pretty late to be able to start to try to figure out what we might need to do. And I think the other one was the long-term caps. I think
Yeah.
we didn't get that until, I think, just 2 weeks ago, right? It was our
Jerry
first
came in.
view of it. It was always just kind of an empty thing before then. I think somehow, like we've done with the personnel, changes, I think we need to push some of these things earlier so that we understand the impact on things, you know, because if I look at the municipal facilities one, there's some in there that I don't support at all, and there's some that I do support, and, you know, I don't know how we best deal with that. I mean, not that my supporting or not supporting is the be-all and end-all, but, you know, it's just a shame to have like a whole thing not go through because people, you know, don't want a few things that might be in something.
Right.
And we haven't had the opportunity to have those discussions.
So your thinking is that having the discussions earlier, you may choose to exclude certain things that doesn't seem to have support, so
Or-
that the article
Yeah,
is
or
a little bit
that
cleaner.
looking at 4.23, right? You know, I'm not saying that there's anything in here that doesn't have merit to need
Oh,
to
it's
get done.
prioritization.
It's
Yeah.
just a prioritization,
Right.
and if we're looking at a 4.23% increase without any of these other things,
Right.
which is, you know, a total of, I mean, it's
600.
it's a total of what, $750,000 in total? More?
You mean, versus last year?
Well, because I'm not just looking, I'm looking at the 2021 number
Oh, you look at
on the
2020.
bottom one, right? Because that's what it's gonna cost us next year.
Yeah.
So you have to add, the 180 and the 130 and the 3.
Oh, yeah. Yep, so you're reversing the 100,000 by adding up those other ones. That's
Right.
true. Yep. So it is more, right? In net, it is gonna be more than the 4.223 that I had there. Just not in FY '20.
Right, not in FY '20.
Yeah, see, that's why it's taken out, because it's not.
No, but only this is taken out. None of this stuff is taken out, right? So, you know, we're still adding 500, 600, 700,
It's about 6.
7. Is it over
That's
700,000?
Pushing 2 million. We're pushing 2 million.
7 and change. Oh, wait a second. Let me sum these up. 1, 2, 3. So for next year, all the warrants would add up, if impact 802.
802, right. And that's just for next year.
Right.
It
We
jumps
have
up in
to-
the following year.
We have to live with it the next year where it's gonna hurt us more.
Next year will jump to 1 million.
We can't do all these things that are on here.
Nope.
That's what we've said. Yeah.
We're gonna have to, we will have to make some really hard decisions. And what I worry about is that it's inside some of these things.
Right.
Like, you know,
Well-
I don't think we can do a salt shed.
Yeah.
You know, I think that, you know, we're gonna have to make really, really hard decisions about what do we do this year and what do we consider in a future year?
Mhm.
You know, or kind of why have we been so tough with the budget for the last, you know, years? If we're just gonna blow it all in 1 year if we do all these things.
Yep. That was our exact discussion, that many of these things are due to not maintaining or keeping up with things for many, many years, but then, you know, over the next 3 years, we anticipate trying to fix all of them, right?
Right, we can't.
We can't. And that's the exact comments that came up in our last meeting.
Right.
For some of them are mandated.
Yeah, you have fuel spills and tanks,
have
right, we
a-
have
we
to
don't
do
have-
that.
Yeah, but as we go
Septic,
through
we
these
don't
things,
have-
as we go through these
Yeah.
things, we'll know those, right?
Right, well.
And
like
it
you-
could be that all we can do is the mandated ones.
Right,
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's the thing, like 120,000 for a salt shed, that's a big ticket item. You know, and that would,
Yeah, and you might look at this and say, oh, well, it's only, you know, 6,000 a year, but it's actually not only 6,000 a
Right.
year, it's only 6,000 this year.
Next year, right, this year.
And then it's a lot of money, and 6,000 is a lot of money.
right.
Oh, my goodness. .23 is without the long-term, the standard long-term caps.
Mhm.
Yeah, without warrants.
without warrants.
So was long, hang on,
I'm just double checking.
yeah,
It's without warrants.
it's without warrants, so long-term caps is one of the warrants.
Well, it's listed on the warrants page, so.
Yep, that would be, long-term caps
That would be,
is
280,000.
280. It's number 14.
Yeah, did you say what it would be if all the warrants passed?
802.
802 for FY '20, and then you had, it's at least $1 million, close to $1 million plus.
Yeah, and then, but then, I mean, some of it's gonna go on even beyond that, right?
Yep.
I mean, police department.
It's gonna go higher.
Yeah, it's gonna go higher, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and this is one of the things that I don't think people
Well,
necessarily think about.
I understand, but what I would like to be able to do is, if the town is going to have to sacrifice again, can we not ask the school to also make some sacrifice?
Well, I think you guys made a slice across, yeah. Yeah,
75.
right, so there was a $75,000 cut.
And we did not, my recollection is often very poor, but I'm pretty sure that, I know actually, that they came back and asked for 33. Back.
Of the 75,
Yeah, because there's this aspect of having reserve for like, special ed situations. And
Mhm.
said, well, we'll deal with it when that
Yeah,
comes up.
deal with it when it comes back.
Right.
Yep.
Well, but of the long-term caps, 120, 135, about $140,000, oh, wait, $155,000 of the long-term caps of the 372 schools
Mhm.
on top of their budget.
Yep. You're looking, yeah, you'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's why I said that 80,000, I'd like to know what the technology replacement is. Because, I mean, ultimately, if we're replacing iPads every 2 years, maybe we can squeeze a third year once, you know? I mean, or whatever it is, you know, and.
Double check my notes.
Yeah, because
on
that'd be
that one.
really nice. I mean, the fire alarm upgrade, I think that's, Jesus, that's all you see in the mosquitoes, is the police reported to a messed up fire alarm. And you know, so that's probably needed, you know, painting it.
That's actually something else, the Simplex fire alarm system. It's not,
Oh, so it's not that? So what is that?
it's
Do you know?
just the broadcast in the building. It's what, there are apparently some rooms that are not receiving the signals.
Oh.
Can't hear them.
Oh, well, you need,
So it's not going.
But
it's
you
not
need
what's
signals in
going
rooms,
to the
right?
Fire department.
oh,
So it's certainly a matter of health, safety.
Yeah.
So if we were to prioritize as, on the you know, basis of health, safety, and welfare, Simplex fire alarm definitely stays in, but painting and ceiling replacement, I'm not so sure.
yeah. Maybe those can get pulled out. You know, and even stuff like that, my guess is that that's probably gonna get contracted out. You know, is that something that they could do in-house? You know,
They're
I mean,
actually doing part of it. We've already cut it back.
have you?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, well, this is
We
part
already-
of not being
we
on
already
long-term
trimmed
care.
it. It was a
Yeah.
way bigger ask
Yeah,
before.
but see, this kind of goes to Nathan's point, like, we have no visibility into any of these, because we only had the one presentation from Jerry, and, you know.
Oh, are you talking, now you're in,
Long-term
this-
caps. No, the
Oh,
long-term, because it's
that
still
wasn't
Jerry, right?
No, Scott. That was Scott.
Oh, that was Scott, okay. Yeah. What's Jerry on now? What is he
Jerry's
do?
municipal.
Oh, okay, he's facilities now, yeah. Finance guy's gotta stop moving around.
And for the fire department, the protected clothing, washer and dryer are very
Yeah.
important for safety, because they're washing chemicals out of their gear.
Yeah. But you know, again, the computer replacements, right?
Well,
For
and
the fire
then,
department.
so the biggie, you know, like kind of glaring one is 80K. It's just-
The
So-
20K for the fire department, don't they have 4?
20K for the,
Wasn't there 20, maybe I'm.
for what, I'm sorry, oh, computers?
Well, the
Yeah.
computer is,
Oh, I'm
is
sorry, it's 2.
No.
Yeah, it's two. But I mean, you know, again, it's, you know, and then like police, obviously 8,000 for computer. Are those the ones in the cruisers? Or are those,
Yeah, those are the ones.
they're not the ones in the cruisers? Right, so.
So, I mean, I think what we could do tonight is go through the non-financial ones and take a position on them, so that at least we have that done. And then come back around and see if we can close out any of the financial ones.
Yeah, so I mean, ultimately, how does it work for long-term caps? That's a done deal? Like, we can't pull the salt shed out now?
Well, the salt shed is a different
That
one.
was
That's
municipal
Or
facilities.
facilities or whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think, Wayne, could we, would we be able to do a separate motion within an item?
Yeah.
Since it's already in,
Which article?
so we're looking at the facility, municipal facilities. You know, those numbers were just actually put in there recently after we had.
15, I think.
Article
15.
Yeah, 15. I mean, do we have to accept that?
Let's see what your latest version is.
Question, the motion would not have to include all of these items.
Right.
No.
Yeah, it says, said projects may include.
Yes, right. So-
Right, but only, we don't want to end up with that same number on the bottom.
Right.
Right. Oh, I see what you're saying, yep.
And the basic rule is you can go up slightly from the number that's in the paragraph, the 392,610. You could go up if you wanted, and you can go a little bit, and you can go down as far as you want below it.
Okay.
Okay, well, they want to go down below.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
so you're fine to move 39,000 instead of 392,000.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, but that doesn't necessarily mean that if the, I was just trying to clarify. So if the municipal facilities got the now 272,000 instead of 392,000, but they decided that really it was a high priority to replace the salt shed, but not to replace the trailer, they could still do that. Is that,
Yes.
because you're not taking,
You may have run out of power or something.
Uh-oh.
Hey, Carrie.
Hi, I'm sorry I got lost.
Yeah, I'll leave you.
Is Jen still there?
Yeah, let me,
We unplugged you because we're cutting costs.
Budget's too high.
Yeah, budget's too high.
All
But
right, so-
also, too, there's a 15% contingency, right? So that 120 is actually what? What's that?
Yeah,
number,
because
18?
yeah.
So 138, right?
right.
yeah.
So I mean, there's that too.
Mm-hmm. But the way it's worded, they could reprioritize that. Essentially saying that
But
they'd
they
rather
could.
give up on the
It would
trailer
be
and
interesting
build the
though,
salt
since
shed,
we've
right?
said, no, we don't want to spend
Yeah,
the money
well,
on the
that's-
salt shed.
Right.
Yeah.
It would be risky.
What's in their charter? I mean,
Well-
they don't have to come to us for approval, right? But,
They're recommending these projects, they're not.
Right.
yeah, this is
Yeah.
that whole.
But they have
bigger
spending
one.
it.
The board's warrant.
I can.
And the
yeah.
motion that goes before the meeting, the board has a lot to say about that too.
Yeah,
Between now and then, you could meet with the committee and say, we're happy
Yeah.
moving 1, 3, and 5,
Yeah.
and then all the rest of it.
Yeah.
There could be that kind of a
right.
decision.
We just can't move all of this stuff.
No.
Well, it's one of, and the 120 is one of the few things that's on that list that is not really directly health, safety, and welfare. Rather, the other things really are for health and safety of our employees. You could argue that, the salt is for the safety of the town, but
But they'll have salt.
they'll have salt.
They'll have
Yeah.
salt. It's
Yeah.
not that we won't have salt.
Right.
I mean, the other one is, it's the police station.
Right.
$864,000. Do we do that
Yep.
this year? Spending a lot on the police department.
Yeah, and the police department, that's one of those things where it was part of that, the full review.
Uh-huh.
And we've been out of compliance, and most towns are out of compliance, right? We've been out of compliance for
Well,
years, so we don't
just to be
get that.
clear, it's not like it's, you know, as I understand it, we're out of compliance of this particular certification.
Exactly,
It's-
right, we're not.
Other than that, I mean,
Yeah.
it's not,
No, it's not dysfunctional.
Right.
It's just, there's this certification that's certain.
I'm going to push back on that a little bit. Again, there are some safety issues
Exactly.
that are being addressed in this.
yes, but what we were talking about was the compliance and non-compliance.
All right, but if you, okay, so it's one of these domino things. If you address the safety issues, then that triggers, you know, the next step. That's okay. So sometimes you can't do a half a project, you have to do.
He's on here.
Oh.
I thought you wanted me to try and bring him back, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Are you there?
Yep,
Okay, so you can,
No,
can't
it's
see
just,
you, but I can hear you.
no, I agree with you on that one. 17, yeah.
There you go.
Police station will be excluded that as well. It's subject to a ballot question in
yeah,
addition to the
that's a
town meeting vote.
2/3.
Right.
Yeah. It's quite
Totally get it.
possible.
It's still,
The town will-
it's still money.
Money.
It's
Right.
still money.
Yeah.
And we're already at 4.23.
Also, on the salt shed, I talked to the guys negotiating with Amoresco on the solar, and they said it would be very easy to build a solar salt shed, if you will. If they're going to do that, they might as well kill two birds with one stone if they can. So that's just it's a potential other solution to it. It certainly wouldn't take place this year, or maybe even the next, but it's a longer-term, better solution.
Something to explore.
But according to this, the salt shed is only in here at 6,000 this year. It's on the municipal facilities thing, it's in at 120, but here you moved it to debt,
Right, so we're
so
gonna,
it's not 120.
not
Yeah.
120, we're gonna borrow for it, so you'll pay
Right.
6,000 next year, and then.
A lot more the following
Yeah,
year.
I understand.
Yeah.
So we have to talk about where it's, you know, when I look at the numbers,
Yeah,
they don't come out right.
no.
I mean, so, I mean, it seems to me like Article 16 we kind of have to do, right?
Well, and it's not 100,000, so.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
And Article 18, maybe we have to rewrite that so that we're growing and selling the marijuana so that we can pay for all this stuff.
We got a cranberry bog that's.
Could you
not
rewrite that one?
cranberry.
That's
Yeah.
coming out of the long-term, the master plan. That's what they're going to propose.
I think it's coming out of the cranberry bog.
And we can sell it out of the Highland Building.
You can all park at the school.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Plenty of, in the new parking lot.
Um,
Twenty-two, 23, 27.
So how about Article 21? Anybody have any? I'm just trying to get something done
21.
tonight.
I don't even have it, I had 19,
That's Public
20.
Safety Communication Tower lease.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
yeah,
just
that was, I
all-
thought it was a no-brainer.
Um,
Hang on, let me get, what page is that on, please?
That's 20.
Oh, here it is, page 20. Do you want a motion, so we can do it?
Well, I just want to kind of go through and just kind of get a feel for,
That's revenue,
Yeah. Whole board.
because you guys don't normally even take a position on Article 4, you know, the consent agenda? All right.
27 is the farm by right. I suppose we should take a position on. 28 is dog license. Scenic roads. The other money one is Article 30, the Spalding.
So, I was at Spalding the other day,
Yeah.
and there were two new sinkholes. One of them was easily 3.5 feet deep, and the other one was 1.5 feet. It's a mess. You know, and somebody's gonna get hurt. I mean,
If we line
ultimately.
it with clay, we could have a pool.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
We'll just trench the wetlands in.
Oh, there you go, we don't even have to, yeah. Yeah, okay.
So, you know, I honestly,
Yeah.
something needs to be done there because it really is gonna become
And it's not
unusable.
it's not being funded by CPC because they're talking about a turf, possibly a turf, and CPC, I mean, what is that, up with that?
So, no, I don't know exactly why they didn't come to CPC. Drew did say about the turf piece, right, because they would wanna make one of the fields turf, potentially. And CPC won't fund turf. They'll fund all the infrastructure around it, the drainage, all of that, but not the actual turf. So I think, for the sake of cleanliness, the idea was that they would try to fund this, unrestricted ultimately, and then, anything that'll be done there will be
Then
CPC.
will be going to
Yeah, minus
CPC.
the turf field.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we need to get something done tonight other than panic.
Well,
Well, do you wanna go, I mean, if we go through the
If we go through, Article 1 is a consent agenda,
Yeah.
and that brings us all the way through Article 8.
right.
Does anybody have any concerns? And will we vote in support or not in support of each article, or just of the consent
the
agenda?
consent agenda, right?
They can exclude if they want.
Any way we want to.
Yep. Anybody who says, I don't want that as part of it.
Oh, well, in case they do, we should probably then vote on each one.
Yeah.
You can do it just like a consent agenda and say, does any one of you object to any of the
Right.
eight?
Right,
If no one
exactly.
does, you're done.
And that's
Good
what
to
I
go.
am about ready to do. So we have the town reports, which we haven't seen yet, the consent agenda, the salaries.
The moderator.
Moderator.
So do we.
Yeah.
The actuarial, post-employment benefits, real estate tax exemption, the Chapter 90 authorization, the department revolving funds, and the PEG local access, which is not transferring it anywhere, just accepting it and putting it into a bucket, right?
This is appropriating it out of that bucket for use for local
Okay.
access. It can't be used unless you pull it out at town meeting.
So I guess, is there
I move,
a motion in support of Articles 1 through 8?
I move the Board of Selectmen take affirmative action, or
Support.
support, vote for the affirmative support for Articles 1 through 8.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Carrie, you have anything?
No, Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Brown eye?
Oscar Lilloye.
Louis, aye.
Okay, so we got 8 done.
Fast.
Only 72 more to go, right?
9, I don't see the reason to
The
not do
budget.
9.
Transfers. Yeah, is there a motion in support of Article 9?
I move that Board of Selectmen vote to support Article 9.
Second? Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Reed, aye.
Brown eye?
Oscar Lilloye.
Louis, aye.
Okay. How
You
about
guys have
Article 11?
what happened to the operating budget? We're not going to do that?
I'm not gonna talk about that one yet.
Okay. 11, special appropriation. I move the Board of Selectmen support Article 11.
These are the same amounts as last year?
I thought there was a little one different.
Yeah, the
The
treasurer,
assessment map,
yeah.
Yeah.
Bigger.
I thought the treasurer.
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Brown eye?
Oskalilowite?
Louis, aye.
All right. Now, you guys voted in support of the cap,
So
long-term cap.
the school tech replacement, this is the wonders of technology. iPad and regularly scheduled tech replacement 5-year cycle. So the iPads are 5 years old. And the note here is iPads are central to the curriculum and they've replaced textbooks at this point.
So they're spending $80,000 a year on new iPads?
It says, well, I'm texting Scott because he's
Okay.
on long-term caps. iPads and regularly scheduled tech replacements,
Okay.
5-year cycle.
Yeah, so it's laptops. and-
Okay.
But is this in addition to money that they already have in their budget? I thought somebody,
You think they have tech replacements in the budget?
yeah, I thought
They-
somebody,
they
this is
do.
a supplement to it. I
It's
thought
probably
somebody alluded to that.
And if it were a textbook, which these are claiming to replace, would we be putting them in long-term caps? Or would they be subsumed into their operating budget?
Mhm.
Um,
The spend is actually closer to 200,000 for technology.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's right, we have a school committee member here. That's right. That's right.
So
That's
it
right.
does supplement that.
Yeah.
And we do rely on it for technology.
Yeah.
Okay, is there a motion in support of Article 21?
Oh, well, moving right along. What page are you on, please?
20.
20, because there's a lot of things to,
I'm trying to skip all the ones that
Public
Gambinos
Safety
might be here to listen
Well,
to.
16.
I move the board,
Pretty soon there's gonna be a warrant article for your sitter. Yeah.
I move the Board of Selectmen support Article 21.
Second.
What is
Okay,
it?
any further discussion? No, this is communications to release.
Okay.
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Brown eye?
Oskalilowite?
Louis, aye.
I'm ready to give you Article 22 also, if you want.
Yeah, this is a straightforward one.
This would be, I don't want to struggle with this 5, but you think that we're not going to have to pay that much for 5?
We're gonna go as long as we can without having to pull the trigger on that one, yeah. Yeah, I think part of it is over the next year, Angie and Sylvia and probably me will have to try to push and pry to get that money out.
Aren't we going to have to spend on the Cranberry Bog Dam too?
Depends.
Yeah, I'm what, yeah, which plan we're doing.
Yeah, depends. But, yeah,
All right, is there a motion on 20? I mean, on 22.
22. I move we recommend approval of Article 22.
second?
And the CPC unanimously,
So we don't take a position.
Oh, you
And
don't?
you always get me on this every year. You know, you always say, did CPC support? And we never take a position. It's just we recommend. But if we recommend it to town,
Yeah,
right,
we've recommended it.
right,
so.
right. So ultimately, yes. Everything that's on here has been supported. And actually, I think everything was unanimous this year. Unanimous support,
okay.
which it isn't always.
Any further discussion about these?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Brown eye?
Oskalilowite?
Louis, aye.
This next one is for Housing Trust.
ROSC.
So
Yeah,
this
this
is
is-
allowing the water to cross?
Yeah.
The water to cross and for Carlisle Affordable Housing to be notified if there were any new projects coming to the planning board, so they would have a chance to weigh in on it.
Right, rather than the housing authority?
Right.
Right. Okay, is there a
I move
motion?
that we support Article 23.
Second?
Okay, any further discussion?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Brown eye?
Oskalilowite?
Louis, aye.
Okay.
Yeah, Solar District, second. we're on it, so.
Yeah, this is to allow
This
for
is
the
the new
school.
solar districts.
Yeah, this actually is necessary.
Right.
Yeah.
I move we support Article 24.
Second?
Okay, this has the smaller lot, right?
Yes,
Mhm.
yep.
Smaller lot
Okay.
and
With an
taller
800 feet
taller,
No trees cutting down.
And no
yeah.
trees.
The Spalding Hill and Spalding Field, that's where they got 300 in order to exceed that.
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Brown eye?
Oscar Lilloye?
Ruth, aye.
Got my name? Okay, 25.
That's for us as well,
So this is us doing the lease.
And the school committee too,
and the school
on their
committee.
site.
Yeah, so that we're, so, and we do this separately?
This is the authorization to enter into the lease. Council's negotiating.
Okay, right, and all we're doing is voting support of, okay. Is there a motion to support Article 25?
I move the Board of Selectmen support Article 25.
Second?
All those in favor?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Brown eye?
Oscar Lilloye?
Ruth, aye.
And how about 27?
I move the Board of Selectmen support Article 27, right to farm.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Brown eye?
You don't want to sit here while we do this?
No,
That's
not so
exciting.
much.
Oscar Lilloye?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Wrap up my
you
night.
didn't want to do 26?
No, it's got money in it, so I want to just look at those all at once. 28?
No dog, that's
No
what.
doggers license fee over 70. Is there a
That's a
motion
good
to
revenue
support?
stream, though. so.
Yeah, right, no,
I
not
move to
really.
support Article 28, or that the Board of Selectmen support Article 28. No dog license fee for
Second.
residents. over
Okay,
70.
all those in favor?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Brown eye?
Oscar Lilloye?
Ruth, aye.
Okay, and
29. I move-
33?
You don't want to do, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, 29.
I move that who are we? Board of Selectmen vote to support Article 29.
Second?
All those in favor?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Brown eye?
Oscar Lilloye?
Ruth, aye.
I
Okay,
can skip 30.
and 31 we're gonna skip.
Well, do we really want to? Don't we know what we want to do with that?
I'd like to know what they did, but
Oh,
Yeah, let's wait and see what they vote.
okay.
Excuse me.
may not be that we have to take a position. 33.
You want to do 32?
I move.
Oh,
the-
32.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I move that the Board of Selectmen support Article 32.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
32 or 33, I'm sorry.
32.
32.
32, Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Brown eye?
Oscar Lilloye?
Ruth, aye.
33.
I move the Board of Selectmen support Article 33.
Second?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Brown eye?
Oscar Lilloye?
Ruth, aye.
Okay. 34 is not going to be moved.
Good.
Good.
And we just go on the fact that it's not going to be moved. I mean, if somebody were to move it, should we have taken a position? Or we just say it's not going to,
Well, I guess someone could move it.
right?
I want to take a
Well, you
position
can-
on it
You
then.
don't have to take a position.
All right.
Yeah, but we may want to.
There may be a revolt
Yeah.
of the voters at the polls from not doing their jobs.
Yeah.
but-
We better take a position! Wait a minute, no, maybe we better not.
Position.
Yeah, be careful what you say.
I know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Where are we here?
Okay, so it's not going to be moved, so we're not going to take a position on it. We can always speak up if it is And so Article 35, amend general bylaws, section 10.1.
I move the selectmen do not support this amendment, this article.
Do we want to have one that we say not, right? Or do we want to say support and then we would just vote in opposition, right? You want to keep it consistent, don't you?
No, you can
No,
say,
you can vote it.
you can say you don't support it. I don't know if, how you
No, but what
word
I'm
it.
saying is you would say the selectmen support the article, right? And then you just vote against it if you don't. It's
No,
a nay
there's,
vote.
No.
there've
We
been,
can
there've
give a
been
nay
many
vote.
times,
All right.
there've been many
All right.
times when it's
All right.
unanimously don't support.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So Kate has made a motion to not support Article 35.
Second?
Okay. Is there any further discussion?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye?
Brown eye?
Oskalilowite? White?
Louis, aye.
And then, we don't have to do anything on page 31, right?
No, that's the.
Actually, from there on?
Yes, that's the,
Yeah, that's 35
The ballot.
article.
Okay. All right, so going back on these, we still have Article 30.
30.
You're going backwards.
Spalding,
Right. 30, we have
31, which is CCHS. We've done that, we've done that.
Somebody must be
We've done
live
that
streaming.
one.
Right, 31.
Town meeting.
So,
So it starts all with 10. We didn't do 10.
yeah. Also,
We didn't do 10, we didn't do 12. We didn't do 13. We didn't do 14. We didn't do 15. Did we do 16?
No,
no,
but we should.
I
That's
I
mean,
don't know that we have any choice on that one.
No, I don't
Is
think we
there,
do.
is there a motion to support Article 16?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye?
Brown eye?
Oskalilowite?
Louis, aye.
So we didn't do 17,
And do the
we didn't do
marijuana.
18, 19,
Yeah.
or 20.
Is there a reason you don't do 18?
No, we can do those. There were just a lot of pages.
Yeah. I move that the
So
board
the
of
first
Selectmen-
one is banning commercial marijuana. I just want to go through them, make sure I understand. The first one is banning commercial marijuana sales. Correct me if I'm wrong, Pete. 19 is,
18 is a full ban.
yeah,
19 is a partial ban. Of the eight established types by the state Cannabis Commission, 18 would ban all of them. 19 would only allow craft cooperative and agricultural use.
So if 18 passes, then 19,
We have to move both.
oh, we do?
Yep,
Okay.
because there's also a town ballot associated with this. So
Oh,
let's say
gotcha.
18 passes, but then the ballot fails for 18.
Yep.
Then we're out of luck. So
Gotcha.
my hope is that anyone that supports 18 will support 19 as well.
Yep.
That way, it kind of makes sense that we have a plan B.
Yep.
and 20 is,
20.
Medical marijuana, that's just cleaned up of the bylaw.
Yeah, it's cleaning up the text of
Cleaning.
the bylaw.
okay. So is there a motion to support Article 20? Because we don't need 18 or 19 for that one,
No,
right?
you don't need
Right.
18.
Okay, let's get that one done.
So moved.
Second,
Okay, any further discussion? We are doing Article 20.
20, Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye?
Brown eye?
Oskalilowite?
Louis, aye.
Okay. Could you just quickly describe for me again, what is craft cooperative?
Craft Cooperative is a multi-use facility that's limited in square footage. So it's meant to be a smaller business type facility as opposed to like the larger distribution centers or agricultural,
That pesky
facilities.
water.
So it's meant to be more of a small business model than the rest of the facilities.
Okay. And what was the planning board's vote on 18 and 19?
Unanimous on both.
Unanimous on both?
Now granted, we haven't voted on the actual warrant article numbers yet because we didn't have it, but a while back we voted to support this and push it to you guys, and that's what I'm quoting as unanimous.
Okay.
So. Now, keep in mind as you're thinking about these, we did in the study try to anticipate if there's any potential revenue from these. It's very limited. So across the board, there's about 85% of the town did not want a retail establishment, and that's the only place that we could collect sales tax on, is on a retail establishment, which would be the 3%. It's only 3% on just the sales portion. So that's why as we looked at these, we kind of ruled these out as revenue making. There is something where the town can recoup costs that we incur in having one of these facilities in town, so police details, things like that. But that's also capped at 3%, and you have to have a proven cost basis. You can't make money on it. It's only to reimburse the town.
So the big tax revenues go to the state, not to the town.
The big tax revenues go to the state, not to the towns.
Yeah, there's no upside here for us.
Yes, that's what the studies have shown, is that it really does cost the towns money to have these facilities in town so far. Now, that might change in a few years, and then we can look at our bylaws again. But right now, there was no revenue generation opportunity that we saw in any of these establishments.
Unless it's a
And it-
town-owned establishment.
Well, there you go, you're right.
That's
Cranberry bog.
That's an important clarification, thank you.
Yeah, no, that is.
Yeah, no, I
And
hadn't.
so where, if there was a craft, I keep wanting to say brewery.
Yeah, right.
If,
Well, we gotta put that right next door. to the
yeah, if there was a craft cooperative,
Mhm.
could that only go in the locations where the medical marijuana
Yes.
facilities
Yep.
can go?
Yeah, that's the importance of the bylaw, because without a bylaw, it can go anywhere. We need the bylaw, one of these two bylaws, to zone it into our currently established zoning district to support
Okay,
medical.
and so that's 3 spots. It's
Yep.
River Road intersection on the right where the book place is.
Yep,
And it's across the street,
next door to Carlisle Auto Body.
Carlisle Auto Body.
Yep, and then the third one, I don't,
It's right across the street from the first one, isn't it? The
Yeah, okay,
red
yeah,
building
you're
right
right. It's
there.
down- yeah,
That,
yeah.
that one right there.
Oh.
Figure
So
reads
it's-
are made.
Yeah.
But they're not gonna grow there in those 3 spots? 'cause there's
no, that would not be growable. The thing about agricultural is it's not truly agricultural. The state does not define the growing of medical marijuana as agricultural, so it doesn't fall under those laws. So yeah, you're right, they would not be able to grow there, so if that does present an opportunity to the town at one point, we probably have to, like we do with the solar, come back and relook at the zoning district for that to support it, so.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Farm by right won't let you do it by right, huh?
No, it's not farming, but right, no. You need like 6 plants, I think you can farm right. So,
That you can do under a grow lamp, and I guess you could do it in the red building.
all right. Well, so also, by the way, with this, town council said nobody grows outside. Nobody grows in traditional fields. There's a very super high water demand for this, and it's usually container-based. So it's not like we're gonna have a cash crop growing across Foss Farm with this stuff. It'll be containers,
You wait till the cranberry bog. There's a lot of water there.
Well, the water, yes, yeah.
There you
Like I
go.
said, hydroponic is probably,
Hydroponic.
there might be a future in that for us.
So,
Okay, so that
so
changes my
how
mind.
is it that
on
we're
this whole
able
thing.
to, just because you went through all this, how is it that we're able to say that, you can't do it in our town if it's a state law?
So here's how you can do it. If you had a majority vote at the ballot, then the law, the Mass General Law does have a statute in there that says that we can now ban it in our town. But you need to have the majority vote at the ballot. That's why after town meeting, we have to have a majority vote there, because it passed in our town by 52%. So by majority, it's really flipped that. It's kind of minority, right? if the marijuana general law at the ballot failed in our town, you know what I mean, by under 50%, then you could just do it right now by right with no other work. But because it passed by 52, we have to go back to the ballot and get this special ballot question to pass at the ballot box too.
Because it can't be, yeah, we want it in the state, but not in our town.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have passed the state if they hadn't. put that
And if
in.
you look around us, most of the communities are following the same suit with either, Billerica is the only one that has unlimited zoning, but it's to a specific geographical area. And I think I described this to you guys the other night, right on our border, by the way, you know, on that side there. So that is unlimited zoning, but every other town around us either has a full ban or a partial ban like we're looking for, that is banning retail establishments.
Okay, and this bans retail establishments?
Retail
Yes.
establishments,
It's only
yes.
wholesale
The second one of those is really focused on banning the retail establishments.
19.
Distribution and sales, where it lets the agricultural piece, in the craft cooperative, you know, the second one would let that occur in our town.
And if 18 and 19 don't, if nothing happened with 18 and 19, so there was no ban at all, it could still only happen in those zones? In those three locations?
No, if 18 and 19 both fail, we are unzoned, it can happen anywhere in town. Now, keep in mind that it's just.
One of each of the 8 types, right?
Yeah.
One of each of the
Yeah.
8 types is so the state law reads that you can zone, the state law is basically zone, I gotta get the wording right on this. It's a maximum of 20% of the total number of package stores you have in your town. Why they based on package stores, I don't know. So that means that we have one package store, so we round up. So we could have one of each 8 types in town by law. And without a zoning bylaw of our own, they could go anywhere. Now, there's still a host community agreement that needs to be done by the Board of Selectmen. So it'll be, people can come in and ask to go anywhere, but then what will end up happening is, because of the state law, they enter into negotiation with the state first, and then they have to enter into negotiation with the town for a host community agreement. I don't think we can block them, but it's something where you do have a little, it's like a site plan review type thing, where you have a little bit of say in that, so.
So, I'm understanding, you are recommending that regardless of where we stand on Article 18, we should definitely support Article 19, because that's kind of our.
That's our fallback.
Our protection in case Article 18 passes
Right.
at the polls or wherever.
So a natural question might be, why didn't we go for just like another, to limit it to the zoning laws? Town council seemed to think that having 3 options was way too confusing. So we wanted to keep it at 2, and from the survey results, it looked like number 2 was up around 85%, approval rating. So we really hope that number 2 will pass the town at least. We're giving number 1 a shot because the majority of people wanted it. I don't think, whether or not it gets 2/3 vote, we'll see. But I do think that the second article should hopefully have the support that we need to get it to go through.
Okay.
So can I make a motion on Article 19 then to support?
Sure. Anybody have any more questions on 19?
So I move that the Board of Selectmen support Article 19.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Kissinger, aye?
Reed, aye?
Brown eye?
Oscar,
Lewis, aye.
Okay.
I don't know if I want to get into 18.
I don't want to just yet.
Let the town decide it.
So, let's just see, are there other ones here? I think, so we've left all the hard ones.
Calculating.
Have you been keeping?
No, we didn't do 19.
We didn't do 18. We did
Sorry, we
19.
didn't do 18. We did 19. That was what we just voted on.
Okay, so we still have to do 10.
So. 18.
We still have to do 12, 13, 14. 15, 17. All right, so does anybody feel like they're ready to discuss the complete streets?
That's 21.
I know that's, so, yeah, it's a low number. Are you ready to discuss 13?
15?
Complete streets.
Yeah, we can, sure.
That way they don't have to keep paying.
No,
money for-
15 is municipal facilities.
13.
13. Complete streets.
Do you have anything, any comments about complete streets? Carrie?
No, I don't. I think we had I think we had a vote on it.
But
Okay.
this is the 50,000.
This is the
This is
50,000.
50, right?
Yeah.
Well, there isn't any other money.
No, right, but it's
Right,
just,
this
it's
is-
complete streets, but it's a supplement to the
Right.
grant, yeah.
Do you want to make a motion, Carrie?
I vote that, I move that we support Article 13, that the town of Carlisle complete streets and crosswalk safety enhancements be supported by the Board of Selectmen.
Second?
Okay. Any further discussion?
I think time is of the essence, basically.
Okay.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Kissinger, aye.
Reed, aye.
Brown eye?
Oscar Lilloye?
Lewis, aye.
I mean, honestly, from there, I just really need to think hard about it, because I want to make sure that I'm not overreacting to 4.23%. And,
Possible to overreact.
and just automatically voting against everything else.
Yeah.
Um,
Let me just double check. Can we?
Well, I think part of what would be nice to know too, and yeah, Bonnie's not still here, well, we should get something, is, for example, the police station, right? It's $1 million. You know, what's the impact gonna be over the next few years? I started to say this earlier, but I stopped. Like, I really don't like it when, you know, people put an article in the Skinner and they say, oh, the impact is only $15 on your tax bill. Well, yeah, this year, but it's all in perpetuity, right? And obviously, these aren't. But they are for an extended period of time, you know, and when you start adding them up, you know, how exactly are we gonna fund these, and, you know, are we gonna get off easy this year but get slammed next year? Because then ultimately what's gonna happen is next year we're gonna have a list of all these things that we approved this year that didn't hit us hard this year, but they're gonna hit us hard next year, and it's the same boat. We'll be at 4.5%.
Right, well, we already know that if we approve the school parking, the salt shed, the contingency for facilities, the wood chipper, the fuel tank, the septic, the one-ton pickup, and the trailer, that's gonna cost us $37,000 this year, but $180,000 next year.
Right, exactly. And then what's it gonna cost us the year after that, the year after that?
The school parking, the $250K for the seats, the Carlisle schools, I thought was going to really be reimbursed by the lease.
Yeah,
and
funded by the
park.
solar.
So that's, I'm not sure you can count that in there.
I just want to ask the board if you would consider taking a position on that article tonight, because the way that we intend to move those articles at town meeting is the solar overlay district, the bylaw changes, the lease agreements. If the lease agreements don't pass, then we wouldn't be moving the paving article. But if they do, and there's a project going there, installation of solar panels.
Yeah.
Yeah, he can't hear you. Is there any way, sorry.
You have to
Yeah.
come to,
Yeah,
yeah.
the
I'm so
microphone, sorry.
So I do.
We've been knitting here, I'll continue for it.
So I wanted to ask if you would consider taking a position tonight on the paving, Article 26, because the way that we're intending to do this is move the solar overlay district bylaw amendments first, the lease agreements next, and if those lease agreements, if they don't pass, then we wouldn't move the paving article. But if they do, then there will be a construction project in the school parking lot, which is 32 years old. It's at the end of its useful life. 30 years is about what you can hope to get out of those. So they will be trenching and digging it up and ripping it apart. And the resurfacing, the patch job will only make it worse. The resurfacing is going to be really important at that point. The lease agreement that the school committee will enter into is going to generate revenue. And we'd like that to be consideration for the fact that we need to resurface the lot. So they kind of go together. I think it's important for us to take care of our municipal assets. Obviously, the parking lot is one, so I was hoping that we could get the board to consider that tonight.
So, to Kate's point though, is that off the table now that they're, Amoresco or whatever, they're not gonna pay for it? I thought that was the last thing that was kind of floating around.
There's some confusion about that, and I'm sorry. We had hoped that they might give us a large upfront lease payment to cover it, to cover the expense. And we asked about that, and they gave us 2 scenarios, and we took it to FinCom, and we're looking at the 2 scenarios. The one payment was a lower amount based on the net present value. Then over 20 years, the payments were it was a better deal, better way to go. So, so we stuck with that, and we've asked them if they would be able to put some amount towards the paving allowance based on what their repairs would have been afterwards.
Yeah.
So, but that's not going to be, it's not going to amount to much, but.
Before we do this, is there anything else that goes under that, wires or pipes, or is there anything that goes under that we should consider repairing? I mean, this is probably a question for.
That's currently under there.
Yeah, that's currently under there, so you don't dig it up in 2 years and go, uh-oh.
Turn up my x-ray vision and let you
Well,
know.
but they must know what's under there, right?
So yeah, if we, one of the things somebody mentioned that was kind of forward-thinking, I thought, was to lay some extra conduit there.
Yeah, you put conduit and stuff.
Lay some
in
extra
there.
conduit there because, in the future, we may want to have charging stations for an electric car there or something. Do you know what I mean? That's kind of the future, so I don't think it would be too much more to have them put some extra conduits so we would be able to have that opportunity. But I don't know as far as anything needs to be repaired. Our facilities director would probably know.
Yeah, I think that's important to determine, because if it's gonna be, because you might as well do it, right? If you're gonna do wiring and if there's gas lines, I don't know what's under there.
That's the problem with this town, is we're really short on as-bills.
Yeah.
It's really hard to know until you stick your shovel in the ground and then you hit the gas pipe.
Yeah, well, I think we're pretty sure that they'll do their due diligence before.
Safe will come.
Yeah,
One thing safe would.
but it's
find
more
that,
so
but-
just if there's gonna be a cost to fix things, right? So you're not, I guess it hasn't been dug up for 30 years, so maybe there's nothing under it. But just something we should look into.
Like an oil tank that we forgot.
Oh,
about
Jesus,
or
no, we don't wanna
something.
look for that. No, that, you leave that covered, yeah.
So,
So anyway, for consideration of the paving, we're really looking at this as, the lease payments would be helping to offset that cost.
Yeah, I totally get that. I think I'm just looking at this whole list here, and I think that, taking it ahead of time without considering everything, I would vote against it.
Well, what they're saying is they're not even they won't even move it if they don't
No,
get the
she's
solar panels.
She's asking us to take a position on it tonight.
Well, I'm just wondering if we could say that we would be in support of it if and only if the first 2
The solar panels,
Well, that, I think that
preceding.
they wouldn't move it unless that happened,
Well,
right?
that's right, so if they moved it, it means that those things did pass, and if those things passed and they're digging it up to put the panels in, we really have no choice. We can't put it off another year. They could put it off a year, let's say even 2 years, if we don't dig it up.
And
But
how
if-
many of these things are we gonna be saying that about?
Well, and also, it's more than just the parking lot. It's the whole roadway around the back and all that sort of thing is included in this.
They'll be doing significant trenching there anyway, too.
Yeah, they'll be trenching everywhere. for that thing.
Not necessarily in the road.
Well, where the buses come up, yeah.
Well, this is around, going to the back of the building.
Oh, to the back of the building, okay.
They have to-
Yeah,
that's
but
where
none
the-
of that
that's
will
where
be
the
done.
connection-
All of that would be put off. It would not be spent this year.
I also thought, and now Victor's in here, but I thought it would be a bond. A bond would be taken for that, and then it doesn't impact the taxes, right?
It would be borrowed, yeah.
Well, it impacts the taxes.
Well, I mean, it
doesn't
right,
report
it's-
2.5.
It's not the same, but it
The-
doesn't, right.
Right, and it's possible if it
It's like
doesn't,
60 grand a year. 5 years.
yeah,
Oh, so that's
After the first year, it's 12,500 the first year.
yeah.
And
And what are,
then-
what are the,
Offset about the 20, what was it, 20,000 a year?
yeah, I was gonna say, do you remember the
Depends on
solar?
block, but yeah, it would be, payment in lieu of taxes for block 3 would be about 22,000 plus, oh no, the lease payment would be about 22,000, and then there would be an additional 10,000, which is the payment in lieu of taxes for just the school, and then the transfer station would be about the same amount. If we get into a higher block, then it's better. The lease payments would be higher.
So of this 60,000 a year, possibly you would recoup.
Well, block 1 would be 35,000, right?
Unlikely we get in block one now, but.
And the transfer station would be 30. So it would be somewhere between 80, between all of the payments would be 80,000 or down to 60,000, right?
Yeah,
Something.
something like that.
60 to 80,000.
I'd like to not take a position on it tonight.
Okay,
Sorry.
thanks for considering.
At the next meeting, but.
Yeah, we have to, we really need to.
Same thing for my salt shed.
I just don't even know how we're gonna get through this. I mean. I think a lot of us are gonna, we're all gonna have to do a lot of thinking between now and then. And in a lot of math. I mean, am I blowing this out of proportion?
No, I don't think so. Do we wanna just talk about them quick, though?
Okay.
But, I'm sorry, about what?
The, like, capital, long-term caps
Oh, okay.
and the municipal facilities. I mean, because I'd like to get a sense just of the rest of the board, like, if there are certain things that you say, yeah, maybe those don't really make sense, or, hey, we really need those and this is why,
Sorry to keep you guys all here so long.
That's all right, it's fun.
It was fun.
Hard to do
What's
without
that?
saying what's an acceptable tax.
I think we're just gonna be talking about these numbers
Sure.
now. Thank you,
Sure.
Wayne.
but I feel like something that said this usually.
Well, that's the key. So what is it? So what is
Yeah,
acceptable?
well, I guess my thing right now is just the low hanging fruit, right? So, or the lower hanging fruit.
Well, what do we think this spill remediation thing is gonna come in at?
Oh, that's what I said, 10 to 20,000.
10 to 20,000.
And that might be for for multiple years.
Yeah.
Right, but it'll be 10 to 20,000 per year for multiple years. It won't
No,
be-
10,000. Well, I'm thinking it's gonna be around 10,000 a year. Question is, should we do it for 2 years so that we can figure out a way to
Yeah.
put that in somebody's budget?
Yeah, like Board of Health.
So it's not always a warrant article every year.
Right.
Because right now, for instance, there is regular testing at the.
Jesus.
Ferns.
No, we don't do Ferns. Ferns does Ferns. We do the police station. Where else do we have wells that we're testing?
Center Park.
Center Park.
Couple of locations.
Yeah, we have that, we already have in our budget every year.
And is that pretty solid, that you think that we can cut fuel spill remediation from 100 to 20,000?
The LSP is supposed to get us a number this week. Keep working on it.
Okay,
Okay.
then
Thinks
we
it'll
should,
be.
then,
It'll be much less, he said, but he doesn't know.
That's an easy cut for us to
yeah,
make.
yeah.
Yeah, we can do that, do that.
But yeah, we should wait until next time.
Okay.
Oh, what'd you forget?
Uh-oh.
Oh, we didn't do the 22. For the planning board for the additional funds. Did we do that expenditure?
No,
No, we didn't. Okay.
No, I got that this afternoon, but no, that wasn't on.
Okay.
That's.
Yeah, I
we'll
forgot
get
to bring
to
it up when I.
Okay, so we already approved the complete streets one. All right, so you wanted to go through these?
Yeah, I mean, is there anything that, people just, long-term caps,
I
right?
have no idea what the painting in the,
Yeah.
I don't know the importance of that.
They go around the building and they paint different part every year,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
is the building going to
Right.
fall down if they don't do it? I don't think so.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's not just part of their regular maintenance.
Yeah,
It's
why-
part of their regular maintenance,
Hmm.
they
Yeah.
they go around. So, now, one of the interior finishes, as I recall, though, was I'm trying to remember, I think one of the interior finishes, because it says in painting and interior finishes,
Mhm.
was a floor, a bathroom floor, which is tile, and I think it was the largest chunk of this,
Mhm.
that they had some bathroom that needed to be retiled. Now, that I'm not opposed to, because I think floors are important,
Mhm.
because you can trip and slip and
Yeah.
fall on floors.
Yep.
But painting, I guess I'm less sympathetic to.
Right.
The ceiling replacement, again, as I recall, it was, ugly.
Yeah, but functional. I mean, it's not falling down.
I don't think it's falling down. I think they're just water stained.
Yeah.
The fire alarm is important. That's health, safety.
Yep.
I bristle at the 80K for technology, I'm sorry. Their textbooks, I mean, if it's just a 5-year thing, I'm not sure it even belongs on.
Right.
So, in fact, that's been a discussion in the long-term caps, is where do we put technology? Should it even be in long-term caps? Because most technology doesn't last longer than 5 years.
Mhm.
And where can we get more expertise to help us go through these, because none of us are IT experts, and people keep on saying, well, it's on the 5-year plan, and we just keep on funding it.
They
every
already
year.
have $100,000 or $200,000 in their budget for that. This is just a supplement to it. Why don't they just include this in their budget?
Well,
I mean, I can understand the first year they did it, when they decided, okay, we're gonna buy everybody an iPad. But now it's standard.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing
And,
expense.
and as I said, if it's replacing textbooks, it belongs in their budget.
Right.
We shouldn't be buying textbooks.
So I think what we could say is we do or we don't support this, but next year, we don't expect to see it here.
I think that would be
Mhm.
fair.
I don't,
I
I think
that
it's hard
would be
for us
more
to
than fair.
cut it at this point, though.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, no,
agree.
that's
But
actually, that's a good point.
I think
Yeah.
that's the way to go.
You
Right.
know, we've been wondering about
Because-
this, not coming in here again next year.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and then it ultimately, because we spend now and there will be higher budget next year, that's deferring some of next year's, ouch,
Mhm.
right? That's a
Right.
good point. That's actually, yeah, I like that.
And then they can
Like
decide
that
how
approach.
important that is relative to something else.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
see, I want them to make those decisions. And we have, as I said, we're always squeezing and chasing, 1 and 2 and 5,000. And then if we, God forbid, you get a $300,000 thing, we feel we can't do it. Well, that's not, I don't feel it's fair.
Right.
We do at some point have got to turn that corner.
Right.
Especially
No,
when
you're
it's
exactly right.
2/3 of the town budget.
Yeah, right, well, it's just,
All right, so it looks like, we'll probably support it this year, but it's not gonna be there next year. What do we think about the cruiser?
There again.
well, is this a half a cruiser or a full?
No, this is a full
This
cruiser.
looks like a whole cruiser, all 4 wheels.
This is full cruiser, and honestly, I've forgotten,
I mean, basically, he's at the point where I believe that what he's been describing over the years is that every year there's a cruiser replacement, but 1 year there will be 2 cruiser replacements.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the pattern that we're on right now.
Right.
It might be,
Live stream.
now, okay, so let's talk about the police station. It might be that if they are garaged, they will last longer, because they won't be sitting outside idling as long.
Yeah, I think his cutoff is a mileage.
Yeah.
He's
right.
100,000 miles.
It's when the maintenance goes up dramatically on them.
But I
Yeah.
believe the maintenance goes up more because they are just sitting there idling. That it's, I know it's not, I think you get fewer miles on the engine. Because you're running the engine even though your tires aren't spinning.
Because I know he's talked about the cost of doing Dodges versus GMCs and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
It's like 4 times as expensive to get the Dodge service as it is the Chevys and the GMCs.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. And it's a lot of money. I was surprised when he told me what the
Yeah.
amount was.
Yeah,
Okay.
he loves the Tahoes.
Yeah.
Okay. The ballistic vests, that's more or less state mandated and that's, to me, health, safety, welfare.
No, that's not mandated. That is discretionary, and he tried to get that, he tried to make that mandatory for the entire police force, and then it could be covered by a state grant.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think he's still planning to do that, but he doesn't know that he can get the grant. I mean, it hasn't been approved, so, yeah, so he may not need that.
Got it. So maybe he would give us that back
And
if he
I can't
doesn't
remember
spend
whether
it?
we put that in the contract or not. Whether
That
we-
they, no, because it was in there and then it came back out.
side letter.
It was a side letter? Okay,
Yep.
yeah, you're right, okay,
Agreement.
yep.
So is this wood chipper a new wood chipper?
No, it's a
Because
used
we
one.
don't have one anymore, or is this a replacing one?
It's a used one, and I believe it's bigger than the one that he's using, and the one that he's using is overused because the past couple of years, it's, on its last legs, at the end of its useful life. The protective clothing washer dryer is special because it's not just your, regular laundromat, because it can take out all the chemicals when they use a lot of chemicals, and it's really sanitizes the clothes and things. And I think they can turn all the uniforms around in, I think it was 24 hours
What do
with
they do
that.
now? Does it just take them longer?
I beg your pardon?
What do they do now?
Well, I don't think it sanitizes, they wash them, but I don't think it doesn't get everything out that it needs to get out. So, again, that's a important one.
Does that wastewater need to go somewhere special?
The
Can it just
what?
go- Does that wastewater need to go somewhere special? Can it just go into a septic?
No,
It
yeah.
goes into the wetland right behind.
No, it actually goes into I think some dry well, someplace first, and it's oil separator.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, there's gotta be something
Yeah,
that goes
yeah.
through, right?
I'd be inclined, just because of everything else we're doing, I'd be inclined not to support the washer and dryer or the wood chipper. I would support him renting a wood chipper if he needs to.
Yep.
But this year is the year that we don't wanna, I don't know, I'm just trying to look somewhere.
We already took out a couple of other things that he asked for, and he almost never asks for anything.
And I'm just looking at
This-
$372,000.
I understand.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
just
he's
trying
just
to
got some
also,
big
but I'm
ticket
also
items.
trying to tell you the
Yeah.
history of
Right.
what went through, because he also had a,
I'm just throwing things
cherry
out
picker.
there. I'm not saying this is
Yeah,
what we're doing. I'm
okay.
just throwing things out there as a
Yeah.
Yeah,
starting
no.
point for us to discuss. And for 15, I would throw out the salt shed.
Yes.
Okay, I'm
Yep.
getting on the salt shed. The rest of the things honestly are health, safety issues.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I think the salt shed goes and the other stuff stays.
Just means there's a whole lot of other things we can't do. I mean, we're looking at a 6.5%? Let's see, what,
Well, it wouldn't be that much, right, because it's lower in the first year. It's what's gonna kill us is the future years.
that's,
When Kate's chair.
I refuse to only look at the $37,000.
No, I agree.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's.
Yeah,
to
no,
only
well,
look
that's
at
what
the
I'm saying.
$37,000 is totally being dishonest
Right.
to the town.
No, exactly. It kills us in the future years. It's the out years that are nightmarish.
Right,
Because
so we have
that's-
to look at that $180,000 that we're adding.
Right.
So
Well-
if we do all this, we're adding over $1 million. So it's a 30 million, so what is that percentage?
Million.
What's that?
The 31 right
Yeah.
Right, but there's also, so there's 21, then what's 22 and 23, 24, 25? I'd like to see they're all 5-year notes. What's the 5-year?
Yeah,
For
but
each.
if we just take the 120, if we add these up,
Yeah.
and we add that to the 4.73, what is the percentage now?
I don't know, that's what I need to figure.
Yeah.
And then I have to say, what's a reasonable increase?
Right, it's
Yeah.
at least 5.23.
Yeah.
Well,
Is that what we want? And I understand that some of these things are really, really important, but, we're gonna be driving people out of town because of these important things that, maybe it could wait a year.
Yeah.
Well, the question is, does that put you over your 2.5%?
We're already over it, right?
no, I mean, 2.5% total? No, we have quite a bit of capacity or what,
Excess
excess tax
Levy.
levy. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
getting late.
Yeah. Well, you know what, I'll call John tomorrow. I gotta finish up his contract anyway. I'll ask him if he truly needs a cruiser. And he's, oh, you're killing me, but, I can ask him about that. And then,
The vests.
and the vest, yeah, if he's gonna get a grant for the vest.
By the way, the DPW is also a used truck he's buying.
Yeah, that's another thing too. I don't know. Yeah, the whole use thing. But also, sorry, just staying with the other stuff here. Computer replacement at the fire department. It's only $2,000, but, and then,
And there's one every year, though.
yeah, but that's why. How many computers do they have and can't they go? Brian's probably not gonna use it anyway. He's probably got some laptop that he's gonna bring either way. Yeah, exactly. Then the library, computer replacement technology, I think those computers get a lot of use, and it's a public space, and I think that's a little different. But then there was the computer replacement for the police, right? Can't they go another year?
So it would be nice if we can revitalize our IT committee to vet some of these things for us.
Yeah.
Also, or, I don't know, do we, and I think they generated a 5-year plan somewhere along the line, but I've never seen it, and
Well,
I'd
you're
be happy to
right?
show it to you, but it's also all over.
Yeah.
it's
The
5 years.
years.
Okay, so then we
Yeah.
need a new one then,
Yeah.
Maybe there's, something new out there or something different we could think about doing. And now, when you guys did it, nobody was using the cloud 5 years ago, really.
Yeah.
Everything's in the cloud now. Maybe we
Our
don't-
plan was to move to the cloud, and we did.
Okay, well, so
But,
that,
I think, I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
think that we're done. I
Yeah.
think what we need to do is we need to just take a look at this stuff and think really, really hard about it, and, be open-minded to what we put in and what we don't put in. And we're gonna have to just make really, really hard decisions,
Yeah.
and what we support and what we don't support.
Yeah.
Ultimately, a lot of really, really hard work went into a lot of these things, by a lot of different committees. And, they did a lot of really, really great work. But then it all comes to us, and we've got to figure out,
Right.
what can we afford to do?
Yep.
If we say no to anything in here, it's not because it's not a really great idea. It's not because a lot of work didn't go into it. It's just, we can't make it fit within the budget. So I think the first thing that we need to think about is, what number are we comfortable with? What
Yeah.
percentage increase are we really, really comfortable with?
but I would like then, also then, to break down the various parts of town and see, you know, if schools are getting 5% increase,
Yeah.
you know, they need to be playing this game with us, you know?
Yeah, we can't have the rest of the town suffer because they get a huge increase.
That's right. See, this is what I'm trying, this is what I'm advocating for. I'm not attacking the schools. On the other hand, I feel like the schools have to remember that they're part of this
Right,
community.
part of the community.
And this
Yeah,
community
yeah,
is,
I totally agree. I mean, that's why we're, you know, in these negotiations and all that.
Right.
I think what we're talking about here, though, and I completely agree with you. I think what we're talking about, though, right now is which of these warrant articles are we going to support? Because,
Yeah.
you know, we're already at 4.23.
Yeah.
And so which of the warrant articles, I'm not sure, and I do know that, you know, I purposefully did not have us take a position on the operating budget, just in case
Yeah,
there's
right.
something that we have to do,
Right,
right?
okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's so late for us to try to effect a change there. You know, we've been a part of the process, we've really been pushing back on that and everything. I think there's just, it's limited as to what we can do because so much of it is driven by salaries. But what we can do is decide, is now when we're gonna spend $800,000 on a police station, you know? Is now when we're gonna spend, you know, money on a trailer or a salt shed or, and I'm not saying that any of those aren't important. It's just, I think we need to, we can't do everything here. It'd be interesting, you know, I don't think, you know, we were able to get it really quickly, but it'd be interesting just, you know, put this all in a spreadsheet and figure out what are the percentages, you
Well, I'm
know?
gonna do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
it's
But-
gotta be a.
and I'm willing to
a
trim
very, very big.
120 off of a salt shed if the school's willing to take off 80K for.
Well, the thing is, though, it's not their call, it's our call, right? So, I mean,
Okay, well, then
So-
I'm willing
Yeah.
to support taking the 120 out.
Yeah.
If somebody else on this
Yeah, I
committee is
just,
willing
for
to
me,
take out the 80.
for me, there's just a little bit of difference. I'm not trying to argue, but for me, there's a little bit of difference between, you're not gonna get this thing that we were thinking about doing, and, you know, at this point, we're gonna take away something that we've been doing every single year as just kind of a matter of course. And, you know, so I think that there's, you know, I think it is reasonable for us to say, look, we either need a whole lot more information about this and why it's, you know, what
Yeah.
you're doing with the other technology money.
And I really
Or,
agree with that.
you know, we're not gonna do it this way anymore. We have to work out a different way of doing
Yeah,
it.
I mean, their education programming is based on having those devices.
Right.
Right.
So you can't
Working.
suddenly say, you know, oh my gosh, if at the end of 5 years, they're really not useful anymore, you know, you have to replace, or you have to change your educational programming. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
Push on them, and I'm not sure we're ready to do that.
Right, so I'm
But I-
totally open to pushing back and
Absolutely.
learning more about it next
Right.
year.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's come up every single year I've been on the board for 5 years. It's like, what is this $80,000 spent
No,
on?
I know, yeah.
And so maybe rather than just saying that, we should find out.
yeah.
Yeah. Alrighty.
All right, I'm
Um,
ready.
We can,
Yeah, and
you can take positions on the remainder of the articles at the next meeting, but.
We have to
this
sign
meeting, you
tonight.
Have to sign the warrant because we gotta go to the printer and post it,
Okay.
and all of that.
He wants us to accomplish something tonight.
Well, so that we have a warrant.
Slave driver.
Okay, so I guess
Don't
I'll
have to
take
agree with it
this.
all, you can vote it down, but, yeah.
So I don't-
So are we voting
else?
anything or are we just signing? Do we have to take a vote? We already
You
voted
vote.
to close it, right?
You closed it, I guess you can vote to execute it or just execute it, sign it so it can be posted.
Let's just
Then
be
have you-
executed.
Yeah. So then, Drew called me today. I'll make sure he comes in for Article 30. Is there anybody else that we need to make sure we notify?
To come in and chat with us?
Yeah, you know, just kind of.
I'd really
state the
like to talk
position
to
of them.
Facilities Committee
Yeah.
and
caps.
long-term caps.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so are we signing this?
And,
Is that it?
yeah.
I'll sign anything.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes from March 20, other than the typo that it's not mock, it's March?
This is Boston, though, it is Mac.
Mock?
Okay, there's those. I had two other typos, but otherwise I had nothing substantive.
I move that we accept the minutes from Mac 26 as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Reed, aye.
Brown eye?
Oscar Lilo, aye.
Lewis, aye.
Okay.
There's one on that page, and
She did.
one of those there, and there ones.
Yeah, good.
Oh, the mock.
Yeah, I want to read it.
I didn't even see that.
I don't think I did either.
I don't necessarily agree with it, but I'd love to read it. It's like a quick read.
Then just call me 11 o'clock.
Ooh, sorry. Oh, it's spinning around.
I have such a
And I think that is everything. So thank you very much. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Reed, aye.
Brown eye?
Oscar Lilo, aye.